Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of what if Deku became the last hope in a lawless Japan? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. When you're ahead, she's coming after, and when you run, she's running faster. And when she loves, you better hope her love is not a temporary high. The young man stared down through the vent opening at the person he was going to kill. The hideout was dingy and musty, with peeling walls and water stains on the carpet. A fuel lantern, like one might see in a campsite, was glowing sleepily on top of the torn-up couch. Food wrappers scattered the floor. The person kicked these out of the way as they paced back and forth across the room, occasionally flashing glances to the narrow, dirty window facing north onto the city street. The sun was nearly set, and the light of the lantern was taking over. The person was speaking loudly into a satellite phone. It had to be a satellite phone, thought the young man. There was no proper phone service left in this area of the city. They were spotted a few blocks from here just yesterday. The person insisted into the phone, frantically. Where are you getting your local info from? Whoever was on the other end of the phone sounded rather gruff. That's none of your business. It's your business to get me out of here. The soon-to-be-dead person was having trouble controlling their breathing. That's what I'm trying to do, Kay, but if you don't cooperate. You promised I would have an escort. 2 of the bodyguards from the school. We can't get them to you. You're going to have to reach the station on your own. That's 7 blocks. I'll be totally exposed. The person stared out the window onto the desolate, darkening city street. I'll be assaulted. The clothes will be stolen off my body and I'll die. To get to safety, first you must go through danger. Kay, you're going to starve there if you don't get to us. I can promise you that. The young man had considered jumping down while they were on the phone. It might be easier that way. But no, the person on the other end of the line said they were from the school. He couldn't risk them even having an inkling as to what had happened. They were shaking. The phone in their hand rattled. I can't do this, they breathed. Yes, you can. You can. It's just all too much. Everything is falling apart. I know, but it's up to us to mend it. To mend this country before it's too late. Come on, Kay, we need your help here. No one knows security better. No response. The person just whimpered. The young man sneered in disgust, twitching, barely able to hold himself back from jumping down. The gruff voice on the other end of the phone sighed. What do you see in your vision right now? The Hayasaka accounting firm, the person stammered. Just out the window? Weiss. Okay, I know that area. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to cross the street and take the fire escape up onto that roof. But that's the wrong way. No, hold on, listen. The firm connects to the apartment buildings on the left. They're a connected complex with a covered bridge that goes over the street. You turn and go that way, staying on the rooftops. That bridge was destroyed last week. Someone's got an exploding quirk. Completely. And no, but there's a big gaping hole in it now. Use your quirk to jump it. We can mark this up as a certain form of self-defense, or we can just leave it off the books. The books hardly matter at this point. Kay, listen. Staying on those roofs should get you just over halfway there. Then it's just around 3 blocks to the station. You can sprint if you like, or you can hide by that pharmacy for a bit and take it slow. Block at a time. Okay, they muttered. Okay. Chest rose, chest fell. I can see the whole route. In my head. I see what you're saying. Right? See, it's going to work. Just use the area to your advantage. You make it to the station and you're home clear. You can do this, Kay. I can do this. I can do this. Alright, I'm going to hang up. And go for it now. Before it gets too dark. Good luck. I'll see you soon, okay? We'll see each other again. Right. The phone beeped. The person sighed and lowered it to their hip. The young man let out a shriek and plummeted into the room of the hideout. The person was not a screamer, it seemed. All they did was turn in a panic and jump back, but it was far too late already. The moment the young man had found this place, they were done for. When it was over, the young man opened the window a crack to let the bad air out. Just outside, passing on the street where that covered bridge had been destroyed, was a gang of people. The young man noticed several monster mutants of above-average height, and their leader had flames dancing in his palms as he took them around the corner. They were patrolling. A shame, the young man thought, sighing, retreating into the darkness of the room, away from the window. You'd have been dead with or without my input. Yo Shindo, hero alias Grand, and Tatame Nakagame, hero alias Turtleneck, now graduates of Ketsubutsu Academy, entered the upper floor of the abandoned office building with some trepidation. Tatame had more than a few doubts about this. First of all, they were up against the clock, since one of the most dangerous Tartarus escapees was known to be haunting this area. Secondly, the upper space of this building was all glass walls, making them easily seen from outside. And lastly, were all the people sitting, standing, watching the two young heroes from the other end of the room. It was a mix of people, some with ragged street clothes, some with dashes of strange color in headbands or skirts that made them look like they were wearing half-destroyed hero costumes. Some had body enhancements from their quirks, but they were all noticeably human-looking, with no real monster mutants in sight. That was another troubling thing. All the reports Tatame had heard, either through official means, rumor, or conjecture, indicated that very few monster mutants had made it back to any of the shelters. Either they were all joining the gangs, or they were out there alone, rejected from local groups like this, being hunted. The last thing she noticed was how nearly all the men had long beards. They had been out here a while. Great, the leader snorted. He had a short sword strapped to his back. Now they send kids to pick us up? Turn around and go home. It's too dangerous here, Shindo insisted, stepping forward. Tatame sighed. Her boyfriend was smiling, but he'd always been too aggressive, and the smile just made it more off-putting. You won't last long if you don't move. Please accompany us back to the designated shelter. Those shelters are barrels for fish, the leader scoffed. The villains will bottleneck them in a heartbeat. Out here, we're free, and we're not weighed down by others who are weak and hiding. Those weak others are your countrymen, and they're smarter than you, Shindo said, testily. You haven't seen us work, someone else spoke up. We've done for some of this scum pretty quick. We can take care of ourselves. We don't need you, someone else agreed. I trust your ability to handle yourself when it comes to looters and thieves, said Shindo. But Tartarus escapees are a different story. The reports we've received about the one near here are worse than troublesome. This individual has little to no regard for human life. They have totally abandoned any kind of moral code. If they find you, you will not survive. And you would. The leader got in Shindo's face. You pompous heroes believe so highly in your abilities, when your failure is what got Japan into this mess in the first place. No, I think we're just fine taking care of ourselves, thank you. Mine's made up. Get out you kids. Of your own will. I don't want to have to hurt kids. Shindo's smile tensed, and Tatame could tell he was grinding his teeth. A few minutes later, they were back on the street, putting the glass building to their backs. Shindo walked ahead of her, slouching, clearly in a bad mood about all of it. What made Ms. Joke think they'd listen to us? He muttered. If they didn't listen to adults, then? Maybe she thought they'd have a soft spot for young people, Tatame said. She intentionally didn't say kids. She certainly did not think of herself as a child anymore, and Shindo probably would have gotten mad at her too. Looking around at the street, it was a desolate scene. Lampposts were bent at unnatural angles. Trash rolled across the pavement. One of the pieces was a newspaper. The wind slammed it flat against the side of a bin and displayed the front page clearly. The end of Japan. One of the buildings up ahead was half destroyed. A cascade of bricks spilled out into the street from its gaping maw. Well, they didn't attack us, at least, Shindo muttered, though I would welcome a fight at this point. He rubbed his arm. Tatame's phone rang. She pulled it out, and Macabe nearly screamed in her ear when she picked up the call. You two need to get out of there now. I saw the villain with my own eyes. He's coming your way. It was so loud that Shindo heard. His eyes widened. But what about the Sevilla dash? There's no time. Run. A shadow filled the sky. Tatame and Shindo looked up in horror. The massive, looming hulk had leapt over the glass office building from behind and slid down its wall, shattering and destroying the facade as he went. "Just you two, then?" The villain laughed. "Well, let's have some fun." Shindo flexed his arms and flattened his mouth. "I guess I gotta be careful what I wish for," he croaked. There was a mix of fear and courage in his eyes. The villain shook the ground when he landed across the street from them. Tatame could see behind him, up in the office building, the group of civilians they'd just confronted. Their walls now destroyed, they were looking down on the scene with panic and confusion. "I'll get them," Tatame told her boyfriend, pointing up. "Understood." One of Shindo's fists slammed into the other. "I'll knock this guy down." The villain had muscle fibers growing out of his arms and legs, swelling like nests of snakes. One of his eyes was mangled, and he had spiky blonde hair. He heard what Shindo said and laughed. "Sounds like a plan, hero. Come on and try it." As Tatame leapt up toward the building, Shindo and the villain ran at each other. Shindo slammed his palms into the ground and began to shake the street, causing an earthquake. The rumbling filled the air as pieces of concrete and brick ruptured and flew out from the battle. Clouds of dust kicked up. Tatame jumped through one and up onto the ledge. The leader of the civilian gang was pulling out his sword as if preparing to join the battle. "No!" Tatame hissed. "Please follow me to safety. This is the man we were telling you about. He's going to... He can't tread all over our town and destroy our buildings without justice from us," the leader cried. "You have no jurisdiction here, girl. Yeah, get lost. This is no concern of yours. We'll protect this town. I won't let you kill yourselves out there," Tommy insisted. Boom. Everyone looked over at the scene on the neighboring building. Somehow, Shindo and the villain, Muscular, his alias is Muscular, had ended up on the roof, and Shindo was being smothered. "Ha ha." Muscular cackled, his fibers wriggling over the young hero's bloodied form, shoving him further and further into the wreckage. "That's 12,000 layers of muscle fibers weighing you down, little buddy. No matter how you shake things up, you can't withstand my sheer strength." Shindo grimaced through all of it and forced his eyes open, pressing his hand against the fibers that were pushing against him. "There are certain things I don't do with my quirk," he said, "because I don't like to hurt people. But you have discarded your right to be called a person." He activated his quirk, and suddenly, all the muscle fibers began to shake and writhe at once. Tremoring earth. Muscular reared back, vibrating, his eyes widened in shock as the quirk worked its way through his whole body. "I'll turn you into a muscle milkshake," Shindo promised. "Then I'll just add more layers." Muscular's arms and legs swelled even further up, suppressing Shindo's quirk, covering it, making it less and less and less effective. Pushing him down again. "Better luck next time, kid." "Bitch, wait, there won't be a next time." "Why okay?" Tatame cried out. Shindo began to disappear beneath all that. Cracks formed in the building beneath them. He was going to die. "This is what real power looks like." Muscular cackled. A green streak zipped across Tadame's vision, so fast that she swayed in place, and wind buffeted her hair and clothes. Murmurs of confusion and interest swept through the crowd of civilians. A bright, sparkling impact of power slammed into Muscular's side, so hard and so fast that Tatame blinked and missed exactly what happened. The very next moment, the villain had been dumped onto the street, knocked right off the roof by whatever it was. There was an impossible amount of dust now, billowing up in clouds on the street, obscuring a glowing green silhouette. No, not dust. The ton of smoke. Muscular. No wonder my sense of danger was going so haywire. The new voice that spoke was warbled, as if put through a filter, and deep and hoarse and full of pain. Tatame's heart skipped a beat. As Muscular got up, he was gasping for breath and grinning even more widely. "That quirk, could it really be you at last?" The smoke parted to reveal. Tatame didn't know how to describe the person. If they were a hero, their suit was incredibly damaged. It was patchy and frayed and could have once been called green, but it was so dirty it was hard to tell. They had big gloves and a filthy yellow cape around their neck. Their face was masked by some kind of grimacing mouthpiece, and a green cowl with pointy ear-like appendages that flapped in the wind. Visible through the dark eye openings were two glowing green points, their eyes. They were holding Shindo in their arms. They had saved his life. "I'll show you real power," they promised Muscular, and from there, the fight was not even close. The civilian gang helped Shindo onto a stretcher. "We found 3 of these in a dumpster," one of them told Tatami. "We take what we can get." Tatami nodded. "Thank you." She reached out, trying to carry the stretcher herself. "Shindo, her boyfriend. He nearly died. We'll take it, young lady." The leader's voice was softer now, his eyes sad. "Don't want him dying or anything. You can't carry him alone. But just respect our boundaries and we'll cooperate with you." Tatami looked to the sky. The mysterious boy had Muscular tied up with black tendrils, and was leaping in great bounds off into the distance, taking the unconscious villain somewhere. "I didn't get to thank him properly," she muttered. "He asked questions about Tamura Shigaraki and All for One. Could that have been?" The police all raised their guns at the same time. "Who are you? Explain yourself." Izuku supposed he had landed rather suddenly. He lifted his arms up to show he didn't mean them any harm. "If they opened fire, I'd have to knock them all out, I guess." "Do you have a spare Iron Maiden?" he asked them. A few minutes later, Muscular was safely contained once again. One more escapee off the streets. Many more to go. Izuku looked back at the police station again as he leapt from rooftop to rooftop, away from it. They were regaining their foothold in the precinct. As for the neighboring area, that civilian gang had been maintaining control, at least until Muscular had shown up. "I can't leave them to their own devices. I have to mark this area down. I'll loop back around to it next week." He had a list now of places in the major cities he checked up on. At least that police department was still intact. Even then, if it became targeted by a powerful villain, alright, I'll keep checking on the station too. It wasn't too much trouble. It gave him around 40 minutes instead of 50 per week to linger in each spot, if he added these to the cycle. But that was plenty of time as long as he zoomed everywhere. Izuku could not afford to leave even just one area unattended. He looked around at the city as it became drenched in evening shadows. Husks of buildings leapt out at him, accusing him with their unseen eyes. Failure. Good for nothing. Muscular hadn't known anything. Not an inkling as to where Shigaraki or All for One were. The wind threatened to pull Izuku's cowl off. He readjusted it as he made his next leap. His eyes scanned everywhere. Paranoia. Shadows leapt across the streets. Was that a person or an alley cat? "None of you would happen to have a quirk that lets me see in all directions at the same time, would you?" Izuku dryly asked the voices in his head. "Funny," they whispered. "You used too much smoke in your fight with the hulking man. You could have obscured your own sightlines and slipped up." "I'll remember for next time," Izuku promised. Mistakes. He made them constantly. Right now someone was probably dying within this square kilometer. Someone else was probably being sexually assaulted. Tints of danger sense were alarming the corners of his perception, but they were in all directions. Constant. It had been like that the whole time, since he'd set out from UA. Only when a huge flare-up happened, like earlier with Muscular, was he able to do anything. Useless. Do something. Go somewhere. He threatened to hit himself in the face, trying to continue to move, spinning around and looking around wildly at the city. He always got antsy and panicky if he went a few minutes without finding something to solve. There had to be something he could do. Anything. Calm down. Keep your cool. Shut up. What good is One for All if the user of it is such an idiot? All Might operated in a time of societal stability. You are not. Izuku refused to engage them in further conversation right now. Unless they had further notes on how he could improve his combat, he didn't want to hear it. Besides, the fact that society had collapsed, that was his fault too. For not stopping them when he had the chance. Tamura Shigaraki's terrifying, gaunt, skeletal face, with half the skin sloughed off to reveal the grin of All for One, flashed through his head. Distant cackles, echoing on waves of the past. They will kill everyone I care about in front of me if given the chance. I have to find them. Those other heroes back there, they had been students too. Not UA students, though. Izuku had panicked for a moment when he'd seen them, but they were only from Ketsubutsu. He'd recognized them from the licensing exam, even. I guess the other schools are letting their graduates go on patrol. He had not seen anyone from UA out here since his crusade had begun, teacher or student or otherwise. UA seemed to be maintaining its policies as a shelter first. Everyone who went there stayed there, behind the fortress walls, until further notice. Where they'll hopefully be safe. Hopefully. Izuku wondered how many students from the other schools were even bothering to hit the streets, or if many of them were too scared, or perhaps disillusioned like many of the pros had been. In any case, those circumstances were at least lucky. Everyone he cared about was staying out of trouble. If he had to run into students, let them not be from Class A at the very least. His phone rang. He knew who it was without even looking. I'll be right there, all might. Nizu slid the device across the desk. This is the area you'll be responsible for, he told the two of them. Tamaki reached for it, but Nijire swiped it up first. It was a little metal cylinder, smooth to the touch. She turned it over in her gloved hands, pursing her lips, eyes searching the object. She found the switch within a second and flicked it on. A humming sound emitted from the device, and then it projected an image of a map out sideways. Nijire tilted her head, then realized she had the device oriented wrong, and flipped it over. Now the map was upright in the room, blue-lit, turning slowly as if on a microwave tray. That humming sound continued. Nijire and Tamaki scanned the map. Look, Amajiki-kun. There's the mini-golf course there. Down at the bottom is Kijimi Park. Oh, and there's a pizza place I went when I was a kid. I threw up, actually it was... Tamaki gently lowered her pointing hand, which had been darting all over the map, and looked back at their furry principal, sitting across the desk in this bright office in the depths of the UA fortress. This highlighted area is the patrol zone, he asked. That's right, said Nizu. He slid two more devices across the desk. These will be your communicators. They go in our ears? Nijire asked. Yes. What happens if we break them? What happens then? Nijire asked. Then you come back here for a backup dash. Why are you sending Amajiki-kun and me to patrol an entertainment district? Nijire asked. Nizu sighed and gave Tamaki a look. Even I can't keep up with her, Sun Eater. I know. You just kind of learn to take it on the cuff after a while, the dark-haired young man muttered. Nizu turned back to Nijire. Miss Hato, that district is under the control of at least 3 different gangs. They're fighting each other, making alliances with each other, giving and taking territory, rooting out hiding civilians, burning buildings, and encroaching into other districts. To make matters worse, the district is almost completely surrounded by areas that are either gang-controlled or unclaimed wastelands that probably have independent villains roaming them. There are likely agents of All for One tossed into the mix as well. Our drone intel indicates there are many people still stuck inside the area, including service and SEC workers. Where's the nearest shelter? Nijire asked, pointing at the map again. The yellow that you see in the northeast. Another matter is that the gangs could be encroaching that way and perform an attack on it. If All for One's agents are involved, you can bet they'll be looking to consolidate a powerful enough force. I see, said Nijire gravely, nodding. So you're sending us to the most dangerous area of any of the third years because we're the big 3. Big 2, Mirio muttered, speaking up from his seat in the corner for the first time. I should be going out there with you guys, but... Nizu gave him a gentle look. You've only just gotten your quirk back, Lemillion. Take some time to train. We don't have any more time. It's a war out there. It's the apocalypse. Tamaki had begun to shake. Nijire noticed. She had a reputation for being dense, but she did know when poor Tamaki got worked up about something. But bad things had come from her taking direct action before. So instead, she chose to simply bowl over Mirio's doomings, which were clearly upsetting Tamaki, with her own loud interruption. Another question. It was what she was best at after all. Is the highlighted area more of a boundary or a guideline? She asked. Nizu and Mirio cut off, and the principal gave her a funny look. You have to protect the entire area that is highlighted, Miss Hado. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking if we can protect areas outside the boundary if we want. Nijire, there's only the two of you. Don't overwork yourself. You may have improved your stamina, but... Mirio looked at her with a worried expression. Nijire blinked. You should listen to your friend, young lady. Focus on your objective. If it were up to me, with the injuries you sustained at Jaku, you wouldn't be going at all. Please don't make me go alone, Tamaki squeaked. But we need you graduates out there. You said third years earlier. You are graduates now. You are pro-heroes. You have a duty. I know that, Nijire thought. More than a little resentment crawled into her brain. But she'd gotten very good at keeping that off her face over the years. Even though her face now was, don't touch it. She kept her hand down. We're pros, but we still have to report back here, she said out loud. UA is no longer your school, but it is no longer just a school. We are now one of the last bastions of civilization on the Japanese archipelago. Speaking of which, I have to actually run and operate said bastion of civilization, so please get to work. Nijire began to spin around in his chair, indicating their meeting was at an end. If you have any further questions, take them up with your squad leader. I believe you two are designated squad Gungan, meaning that would be gang Orca. Tamaki bowed before he left. Thank you, Principal Nijire. We won't let you down. I believe you, the principal said softly. It was the first time Nijire had ever heard that tone in his voice. Mirio followed them out. Nijire and Tamaki wired the communication devices into their ears, Nijire struggling with hers a little. The skin on her right ear was still taut and tough from the... Don't think about it. The three of them walked down the hallway and out into the hospital-like meeting space, where many civilians and students were milling about. Nijire turned the projection map back off and handed it to Tamaki as they walked. The dark-haired boy gave her a look. You want me to hold on to it? She gestured down at herself. You think a suit this skin-tight has pockets, dear? Tamaki sighed, his eyebrows low, and he swiped it from her. Don't call me dear, Hado. Mirio's eyes looked around at the crowd as they shouldered past another group of students. This open space was in the middle of the UA fortress, and tables had been set up here and there, where people were eating rationed meals from metal trays. You guys should get to Gang Orca, he said loudly. Mirio, Tamaki's voice was gentle. I'm sorry you can't come with us. It's fine. It's fine. The blonde boy wasn't smiling. Don't worry about it. If you were out there, I'm sure the people would be full of hope. Tamaki lifted his hood over his face. As it stands, my ability to inspire hope in civilians is... Don't sell yourself short, Sun Eater. You've got bright and shiny Nijire with ya, remember? Mirio's eyes danced to her face, and then quickly away. Yeah, as if people aren't gonna look at me and run off, screaming. You could have been the next symbol after All Might. Everyone knows it. We always talked about it in class. I don't know if I can be a symbol. Tamaki's hands trembled. We're all gonna have to be symbols before this mess is cleaned up. Everyone has to do their part. That's what you've been assigned. Your part. Just worry about that one area, and everything will turn out fine. Someone shouted at Mirio, waving him over. Mirio waved back at them to indicate he'd seen. Forcing a smile, he waved over Nijire's head, which made her pout a little at the reminder of how much taller he was, and then turned back to the two of them and said, I gotta go. Good luck, you. I love you guys. Stay as safe as you can. He turned away but then paused and said one more thing. Also, if anyone was going to succeed All Might as the symbol, it would be Midoriya, remember? He's already out there. Midoriya. Nijire looked down at her gloved hand and opened and closed her fist. The skin underneath there was still sensitive, but flexing her fist regularly apparently helped. She still remembered Recovery Girl's words. It's too much for me to heal completely, dear. If I used my kiss on you now, your body would die from losing so much energy. It all came back to her quirk, didn't it? Her stupid quirk and the way it affected her stamina. Midoriya. After the man who wielded the blue fire had nearly killed her, that boy had used his black tendrils to restrain him. Both of Midoriya's arms had been broken at that point, so he'd emitted a tendril from his mouth. And even before that, at the Yakuza raid, Overhaul had come to the surface and probably would have killed her if he hadn't followed. Maybe she didn't have all the details right. Her mind tended to rush everything in battle. But the fact stood. Midoriya was a real hero. "Well, there's no time to mope," she said out loud brightly. "Let's go protect some pizza parlors, Amajiki-kun." "That's not all they have there," he muttered, but he followed her toward the edge of the space, where it opened up into a courtyard. The UA fortress wall loomed far above them, partially blocking the sun, creating a huge shadow that cast across the ground. A few construction robots zoomed by. Then, a moment later, a squad of policemen marched past in the opposite direction. Other groups milled about in the distance. "Did you say goodbye to your mom?" Nijire asked her partner. Tamaki nodded. "She was asking me almost as many questions as you would have." She managed a smile. That was about as much banter as the boy was likely to make during this whole operation. "My folks wanted to know everything about where I was going. Maybe I should go find them now and tell them, oh, but there's no time." She clicked her tongue and pouted. "Well, at least you get it from somewhere." "Nijire-senpai." Nijire turned. Running up to her, out of the shadow of the wall, were two people, Chaco and Tsu. She immediately grew uneasy, already knowing what they wanted. "You two should be back inside," she told them. "You're going out, aren't you? Into the streets. Right now. Don't try to lie to us, Ribbit." "I would never lie to you," she told them. Well, that wasn't strictly true. Nijire had a reputation for telling mischievous fibs. But that didn't apply here. "I know you can't say any details," Ochako said. Her brown eyes were swimming with guilt and regret. Nijire knew exactly what it was about. "But, if you just happen to see Deku while you're out there, bring him back, Ribbit," said Tsu. "Bring him back to us. Please." None of the adults will listen. "You guys are our only hope." Nijire looked at them both in turn. They were very serious. If something doesn't change soon, their whole class will probably try to break out. It was well known around the compound that Class A was antsy. It was only a matter of when. Personally, Nijire thought that Midoriya would be the last thing they'd find. Out there in the wild? And yes, it was the wild now. Streets on fire, looters running the show, supply lines cut. She and Tamaki were heading into a land of cataclysm. They would run into many dangers before they'd ever find Deku. And yet, she remembered those fierce looks on his face that she'd seen in battle. He would never give up on something. Never ever. If it was Nijire lost out there, and Ochako had walked up to him and asked him to find her, even though they had barely had 5 total conversations, he wouldn't sleep until he'd tied me up with those black whips and dragged me back here. "I will do what I can," promised Nijire Hado. "Your body was warm when she was cold. You would long for love." Her storm was a temporary lie. The police gathered along the narrow corridor, murmuring to each other. The sounds of a flashing camera could be heard, muffled, in the room at the end of the hall. Naomasa Tsukachi walked slowly through the crowd. The officers parted to let him through and turned their heads to gape, but he knew they were looking at the person behind him. Deku followed him close behind, a silent, masked figure. Looming. His head only slightly turned to look this way and that at the staring officers. Many of them paled and averted their glances, terrified of him. The two of them sauntered on toward the end of the hallway, to the room where the corpse was. Camera flashes danced on the wall. Click, click, click. Murmur. Tsukachi turned to face Izuku. "I appreciate your help taking out the gang," he said, "but you don't need to see this." Deku just stared back at him for a long moment. Those green eyes gave nothing away. "Yes, I do," was finally the short, deep answer. "I have to see everyone," Izuku thought. "They're all my responsibility." He could have been at Shiketsu. He could have been there when it exploded. That news had come in before nightfall, right after they'd finished cleaning up this precinct. But he was here instead. He was here, so he had to finish this out. But if I had just managed to get close enough to the school for danger sense to activate, then maybe I could have stopped it. You cannot be everywhere at once, ninth, said N, the sixth user of One for All, inside his head. Izuku followed the detective into the room. It was a small hideout, but a dingy couch in the corner was the only thing taking up significant space, so there were a few investigators able to fit, circling the corpse sitting in the chair in the middle of the room. The woman's head was tilted up to look at the ceiling. Her face was white and sallow, decomposing. How long has she been here? Izuku asked, doing his best to keep his voice level. One of the investigators looked up. Medscan says somewhere between 80 and 90 hours. Tsukachi hissed through his teeth. Christ, he muttered. He turned on the flashlight on his phone and slowly circled around to the front of the body. Izuku trudged around the opposite side. He inspected the couch. There were a few things in evidence bags, mostly empty food and drink cans, but there was also an extremely dim lamp, flickering on the floor. Whoever had last been in here, whoever living that is, had left it on. Not a meticulous killer, he muttered. You fancy yourself a detective now? Said Daigoro Banjo, user 5. Whatever the situation calls for, said Izuku. That will not do. It was the voice of the fourth user, Hikage Shinomori, who'd gifted him with danger sense. You have one purpose. You cannot afford to spread yourself thin. Why am I preparing to stop all for one, if not to prevent things like this? Izuku turned to look back at the dead woman's face. Her eyes and mouth were open. It was funny. If he'd seen something like this a year ago, he'd probably have vomited on the spot. How many more could there be? He asked softly. The other men and women gave him strange, apprehensive looks. If she's been dead that long, how many other corpses might we find in these dark, hollow buildings? How long was this district under gang control? I've helped the police carve a foothold here for now, but flashlight beams from the investigators crawled all over her. Medscan revealed something else too, one of them told Tsukachi. She was unconscious when she died. Knocked out? The dark-haired man asked. There's no head wound. Just the puncture wounds in the chest. Izuku walked to the window and stared out of it. Midnight, he murmured. Deku, it's 3 a.m., Tsukachi said, turning from the body to stare at the hero's back. No. Midnight the heroine. Her quirk used a gas to knock people unconscious. If you can do a scan of the air in the room for residuals, you should. The investigators all exchanged glances with one another. Tsukachi flattened his mouth. Get someone on it, he muttered to one of the officers. The man nodded and left down the hallway. Izuku turned back from the window and gazed at the body again. Also means her eyes were likely pried open after the fact. By the killer. He got close. One of the investigators moved their light beam to her face again. Izuku tilted his head. Not meticulous, but wanted to send a message for people to find. You know her? He nearly jumped, so jarred by the abrupt interruption from Yoichi Shigaraki, the first user. I told you to stop going through my memories, he muttered. What? One of the detectives asked. Speak up. What did you say? Nothing. Careful. If they realize you have voices in your head, they're already terrified of me. You can see it in their eyes. But what about her eyes, ninth? They're magenta. I see a woman with those same eyes in your memory of the provisional licensing exam. Her face was fuller, yes, but it's her. Do we know who this is? Tsukachi was asking. None. Nothing on her person to identify her. She worked for Shiketsu, said Izuku loudly. His mouth had gone dry. For their security, I think. He backed away from her face. Gasps and murmurs filled the room and the hallway. Shiketsu. Security. There's not a lot here, but maybe we need to focus on what we don't find. The fact that she has no ID or wallet, this wasn't just a murder. Tsukachi stared at the corpse grimly. It was a robbery. Likely a robbery of information or ID that could get someone into Shiketsu. They'd all heard about the explosion, obviously. The school had been badly damaged. Several dozen people were killed. At least 100 more were injured, including civilians who were using the school as a shelter. If it could happen there, it could happen at UA. Mustn't think about that. So we're dealing with a killer and a terrorist, Izuku muttered. What do we know about them? Well, there's no evidence from the school about the bomb or bomber or otherwise, said Tsukachi. And we did a scan of the hallway and found no recent footprints or disturbings of the floor. Before we arrived, no one had walked in the hallway for weeks. Izuku stared at the woman's eyes again. They had been pried open on purpose, he was sure, and with her head tilted back like that, it was almost like she was looking even further than the ceiling. It was almost like she was looking at the top of the wall behind her. He slowly tilted his head up and pointed at the air vent. The killer was small. More gasps and murmurs from the detectives. Deku walked back across the small room and reached the wall. He used Nana's quirk to float himself up just a few inches and unscrewed the vent cover slowly, deliberately. Hey, Tsukachi, you lettin' this crazy guy do that? What about chain of evidence? Calm down, Ishigami, just let Deku do his thing. Stab wounds. Of course, there were plenty of quirks out there that allowed people to be small even as grown-ups. The Yakuza had had that one guy who puppeteered himself around in a little mast sack that was barely a foot tall. Iranaka. And that was a grown man. Maybe it's just my inherent bias, thinking that a murderer and a bomber would have to be an adult male. But the stab wounds. Could Himiko Toga have fit in this air vent? Definitely, especially if she'd used someone else's blood who was smaller than herself. If it's Toga, she would have no real motive to bomb Shiketsu, that wasn't her style. Which meant she had likely done it on orders from the big man himself. Is there a way you can scan to see if any blood was deliberately drained from her body? Izuku asked behind him as he finished taking the vent cover off. More stirrings from the detectives. Shuffled footsteps. It might be too late in the process for that, Deku, Tsukachi muttered. You're jumping to conclusions, ninth. Seeing the paranormal liberation front everywhere, even things that are out of their hands. This is all their hands. And my hands? It was the battle between us that allowed all this evil to emerge from the shadows. There was a piece of paper inside the air vent. Izuku slowly procured it and floated back to the ground. Naomasa approached him carefully, with wary eyes. What does it say? What does it say, Deku? The ragged, masked hero slowly turned the piece of paper around to show him. Taped to the bottom of it was a card, business card sized, with a strange symbol of concentric circles connected to a triangle, gold on a green background. The paper itself was white and had black text written on it in pen. Deku read it aloud as Tsukachi read it with his eyes. Their future is in your past, pros. Pros? Naomasa muttered. The pro heroes? Deku nodded. And the future they're describing is the future of hero students. He turned the paper back over and read it again, looking down at it. To Naomasa, his voice was as husky and hard to place as ever. Whether they're working for All for One or not, this person is targeting the hero schools. Tsukachi and Izuku emerged from the ground floor of the building and met All Might on the street. The tall, gaunt man was leaning against the driver's door of his armored black car, arms crossed, looking down the street with an uneasy expression. Izuku followed his gaze. The nearby buildings had officers streaming in and out of them, and some civilians had been gathered or herded. Men, women, children, families. Hardly any mutants once again. It's the same on the other blocks, All Might muttered. Met some resistance. People saying the gang protected them better. Some? Tsukachi asked. Tashinori Yagi shrugged. Others were saying the gang killed as they pleased. Mixed messages again, Izuku muttered. He stared at one family that was going past. Their frightened eyes practically bugged out of their pale, emaciated faces. A young boy, no older than 10, was wearing a smudged, dirty blanket around his shoulders. Like a cape? If only we had more heroes, Tashinori sighed hollowly. These people need some hope. A few police officers and people stared at him and the car as they walked past, but no one said anything. Their faces were all empty. Some even looked apologetic or accusing. When their gazes passed over Deku, they almost universally started, turned away quickly, and kept walking. All Might nodded up at the building. What's in there? Murder victim, Tsukachi muttered. Connected to the Shiketsu bombing. She worked for security. Magenta eyes. The skeletal man gasped. That's Kei Mikuno. She's a major technician there. Principal Nizu was just telling me about her the other day. Izuku leaned forward. In what context? Saying he wished he could collaborate with her on the potential UA Shiketsu tunnel link, but Shiketsu kept saying she was unavailable on calls. Well, Tsukachi commented with a whistle and another glance back up to the second-floor window. She was here. I have a bad feeling about this, Izuku muttered. I'm gonna do a quick perimeter sweep of the district. Check for stragglers. He prepared to lift off, green lightning wreathing his feet. Wait, one moment please, young Midoriya. All Might gestured for him to stay down, and turned to open the car door. Tsukachi nodded to them both, realizing he was about to intrude on a one-for-all conversation, and took his leave. I'll see you back at base, Toshinori. All Might just inclined his head, and then went back to reaching inside the car. He pulled the tablet screen out sideways, attached to a robotic arm that could swivel it from its place in the dashboard to viewable from outside the car. Hawks and Genist wanted to check in. Deku shifted from side to side, antsily. I have nothing to report at the moment. Eyes darted up to the sky, above the rooftops of this devastated stretch of town. Need to get moving. He could feel the refugees' frightened, accusing eyes upon him again. Yes you do. If this Mikuno-san is dead, then they need to know. All Might pressed a button, and the tablet screen came to life. Visible was something that looked like a hospital room. Near to the camera and to the left, close enough to be distorted, was the face of Kigo Takami, a Hawks. He was still wrapped up in gauze, but at least he could actually speak now. A bit further back, sitting in a chair next to a tall potted plant, was Best Genist. They both turned to look at the screen, surprised. All Might, they exclaimed together. What are you doing in a hospital? Toshinori asked. Behind them was an empty white bed with medical equipment next to it. This is the one they're bringing the Shiketsu survivors to. It was hard to tell if the connection was just bad or if Hawk's voice was still mangled from his burns. Endeavor's been gone for an hour. His eyes were worried. It's bad, Yagi. He was totally panicked. The two civilian siblings made it out all right, but Genist put an anxious hand through his hair. Siblings? Izuku perked up and got closer. Are you talking about Natsuo and Fuyumi Todoroki? Hawks nodded. Besides Shoto, the whole family was in the Shiketsu shelter. Was easier to extract them there from the post-war hospital. Faster. Izuku felt his legs turn to jelly. He fought to stay upright, retreating into his own mind. The family. Todoroki's brother and sister and mom. No, Todoroki, I'm so sorry. I should have been there. Is there no word of Rei? All Might asked. That's what NG went to find out, said Hawks emptily. You can imagine. He kind of blasted out of here in a fury. Izuku cast his eyes back up at the window. Whoever did this has to be stopped, he said, loud enough for Hawks and Genist to hear on the other end. We've just found the corpse of a woman who worked for Shiketsu security. There was no ID on her, so the killer must have stolen it, and then used it to plant the bomb. Hawks gasped, leaning back in his seat, but Genist was all business. You say stopped death? Not arrested. This implies that you think they will do something else. Izuku nodded. There was a note left for whoever found the place. We have reason to believe this person is targeting hero schools. Hawks muttered. I really have to go, Izuku said, turning toward All Might. The other users were arguing in his head. He couldn't think about it much longer. I have to stop this person. I left UA to keep everyone I love safe, but if the school gets attacked. Listen, young Midoriya, All Might pleaded. Kei Mikuno was very important to Shiketsu's security. It may be that the killer was able to plant the bomb undetected because she wasn't there to help with the reinforcement effort of the shelter. Genist nodded, jumping on the train. UA has all of its best security staff and technicians in safe hands. And don't forget those a-hole little robots, Hawks muttered. UA is the safest place for anyone to be right now, and it will remain that way, said Toshinori. Izuku took a long time to respond. For the three pros watching him, it was impossible to tell what he was thinking or feeling. He was masked, withdrawn, quiet. "Changes nothing," he finally said. "They still need to be stopped. You all must think I need to stay on the hunt for Shigaraki and all for one. Well, it may be that they're behind this. That this person is working for them." Hawks and Genist exchanged a glance. "Well, it's certainly possible. But unless there's a concrete lead at that crime scene, then it's no better than we were before. None of the criminals we've apprehended have had any useful information." "The police are investigating the place," said All Might. "In the meantime, Midoriya—" At that moment, Endeavor burst back into the hospital room. His wife was in his arms. Hawks and Genist leapt to their feet. "Clear the way!" Enji Todoroki barked, sweeping over to the bed, flanked by doctors. Rei was unconscious, her clothes partially scalded. "Endeavor? Is she?" "No bones broken," one of the doctors said. "But we need to check for internal damage. Get her hooked up." Go, come on." Noise flooded the tablet screen. Hawks turned back to it and said, "Sorry, Yusen. Gotta go." And things went dark. Tashinori sighed again. Perhaps it was this stubby Tuya Todoroki. Perhaps the family was the target. "No," Deku muttered. "Planting a bomb and hiding the shadows? He wouldn't do it like that even if he was ordered to. He would show his face. He would make it public." All Might had to admit his pupil was right. Too right and too cynical. Deku activated One for All again and took off into the sky, not bothering to say goodbye. All Might watched him disappear behind a rooftop. He tried not to weep. The woman wouldn't stop speaking into her mind. Nova clutched her ears again, legs pushed together, as the voice echoed like thunder. "We are coming for you. You are not safe." The voice itself had a kind, musical sort of lilt, even though the words were threatening. Nova remained in the corner of the burned-out hotel lobby, clutching herself, begging the woman to stop. "We're to the north. We're to the south. We're to the east." Silhouettes appeared in the open doorway. Once that opening had contained a glass revolving door, which led into this once grand lobby of red carpet and gold trim, one of the best hotels in the entertainment district. Nova had taken orders from many clients here over the years. Now it was just a husk. But it was nice and shadowy to hide in, this close to the twilight of dusk. Unfortunately, there was no hiding from the quirk that was causing this voice. "Nova," one of the silhouettes who'd appeared in the doorway called. "These." It was the twins, she could tell by the accent. "Oh, for F's sake, there she is." The two men jogged up to her and picked her up by the armpits to make her stand. Nova kicked and struggled. The woman," she gasped. "She won't go away." "We know," one of the twins said with an exasperated eye roll. The two of them began half escorting her, half dragging her, out of the lobby and onto the boulevard. "It's in everyone's head, Nova. You're not special." An intimidation tactic. Stupid heroes and their psychological warfare. They'll never take Kijimi back from the outfit. Nova screwed her face up angrily as they dragged her onto the pavement of the boulevard. She was barefoot, and some of that nearby broken glass and rebar gathered up around collapsed building areas did not look friendly. They always call it the outfit. Call it what it is. The mob. The battles that had taken place here in Kijimi had been really bad at first. Then things had sort of organized. Personally, Nova had lived here for most of her adult life, and while she'd never been happy, this was by far the worst it had ever been. The mob had always been a presence, and she'd done work for many of them, but they'd never had such control. And now, Nova looked around at the ruined boulevard street. Half-destroyed colored neon signs flickered in the twilight. A marquee hung vertically off the front facade of a theater. Abandoned luxury cars littered the side of the road. "I can walk by myself," she hissed, forcing her arms away from the twins' iron grips. One of them chuckled. "All right, sweetheart. Have it your way. Just stick close to us." The other one squeezed her thigh as he pulled away. She shuddered, and then the woman's voice came through again. "Careful." That was the only word she said. One of the twins started a little and looked around at the roofs, one hand on his weapon. "Do you think," he asked in a hushed voice, "do you think that was directed at us?" "No, you idiot. She's only capable of sending general messages unless she's identified the exact person." "She? Who's she? Nova dared to ask. Mandalay. One of them stupid wild pussycats or whatever. It has to be her. The twin frowned. His brother smirked at him. Some kind of fanboy, are you? Shut the F up. Boss makes it his business to know some of the heroes, and it's good for us to know too. For situations just as this. He tapped his forehead knowingly. You must have seen her nudes or something. I told you to shut the hell up. Nova suppressed a giggle, and unfortunately they both heard it. They turned to look at her in sync as they walked down the sidewalk, now with equally annoyed, testy expressions. Something funny, dollface? Something about nudes? We've seen more of you than that, you know. That we have. Heh. Nova slapped their hands away from her chest, which was only covered by a loose t-shirt she'd stolen from a hotel room with the door left open. Her legs were totally bare to the elements. You have to pay for that. It seems to me we're paying by protecting ya. Boss didn't order us to do this, you know. We're doing it out of the goodness of our hearts. Yep, said the other twin. Seems to me like you owe us. I don't owe you anything, Nova hissed, though on the inside, she was terrified. Neither of you have ever tipped me, and I don't need protection. Ya sure, hon? One of them leered closer to her. They had passed a gap between buildings, and now to Nova's right was a deep, narrow alleyway. She gulped, feeling sweat go down the back of her neck. Stupid fool. You opened your mouth. All these years you've known your place, and this horrible situation has made you too reckless and desperate. Gonna get yourself killed. Of course, they would do other things to her first, but that was nothing she hadn't endured before. Murder, though, it had never been such a problem before the war. Now the mob controlled everything, and henchmen like these scum, they could do anything and bury it away. One of their hands brushed her hair from off the front of her face. The other twin moved his hand to squeeze her, but Nova closed her eyes and prepared to just sit back and deal with it. Get away from her, said the heroine in their heads. The twins froze. Nova dared to open one eye. And Mandalay? That was what they'd said her name was. Look down the alley. Heh! One of the men raised his weapon and spun to look the opposite way, down the street. Like we're stupid enough to. Well, isn't this curious, said a bright, peppy female voice. Not the same voice that had been in their heads, and it was coming from above. From the sky. Nova looked up and gasped. A young woman was descending on bright spirals of yellow light, emerging from her hands and feet. She had a skin-tight teal costume with dark blue highlights, and while half her face was quite pretty, the other half bore some moderate burn scarring. Her hair was periwinkle-colored and cut close to her shoulders. Hey, why are you harassing that space lady? Could it be that you're both super lonely? The heroine asked. She somehow maintained an expression of pure inquisitivity, even putting one gloved finger to her chin and tilting her head cutely. The twins turned their guns up to the sky. Crazy beach dash. Something flew against the arm of one of the men and knocked him backward against the wall of the alley, pinning him there and forcing his hand to open and drop the gun. It was a giant snapping clam. Then, a tentacle wrapped around the other twin's hand and squeezed the gun free. Nova whirled. There was a hooded boy in a white cloak coming their way. He had feet and wings like a bird's, and the tentacles were coming from the fingers on one of his hands. His other hand was entirely like a clam. He used the tentacle to yank the twin toward him and swung his clam hand toward the twin's face. The mob guard, who had the ability to create miniature force fields on pieces of his body, activated his quirk on his own face, and the hooded hero's strike rebounded. The twin spun with practiced agility and kicked him aside. And the flying heroine descended on him from above, her yellow energy enveloping his body and shoving him against the wall. The other brother had gotten himself free and fastened his arm around Nova's neck from behind. She gasped. Help dash. The periwinkle-haired heroine's eyes widened as she turned to that look, and Nova knew that brief expression all too well. A slight falling in the peppy personality, revealing the woman within. I have to hide it too, girl. Yes, it was a girl, really. She couldn't have been older than 19. Stay away, you scarred freak, the man snarled at the heroine, or else I snapped the were's neck dash. The hooded hero fired something from beneath his cloak. It moved impossibly fast and struck the twin in the head, so hard he fell over unconscious. His arm fell away from Nova's throat. She looked down and saw a pineapple rolling at her feet. "That's a funny quirk," she said weakly, then felt her legs begin to go. Hey, whoa. Suddenly the cloaked hero was holding her, keeping her up. "Oh, nice catch, Amajiki-kun." The hero who was holding Nova took the white hood off his head. He was a dark-haired boy with pointy ears and a nervous face. "I tried my best," he muttered. "Thank you for saving me," Nova told him, managing a smile. "But maybe you should leave the tentacle and clam hands for later?" The boy stared at her, not understanding, but then his eyes widened, and with a furiously red face, he turned his hands back to human hands. His female partner laughed, and he lowered his head, letting a shadow fall over it. "Sorry," he muttered. His hands were rigid and sweaty. "We should find you some clothes." Oops. Nova had returned to the default way she acted around men, especially men who held her like the boy was holding her now. This guy was a hero. Of course he didn't hire girls like her, and had no idea how to react. And he seems like he could still be in high school. "That was good work though, Sunny-Ater-san," the peppy girl exclaimed, hopping around and inspecting the twins, who were both knocked out on the ground. "They seem to be out cold. Who were they, ma'am? Were they propositioning you? Oh, your eyes and skin are so cool, by the way." She leaned in close to Nova's face, eyes glimmering with excitement. "Are those little stars in your eyes? Are those galaxies on your thighs? Is it actually your skin, or is it just really good body paint? Have you ever counted how many stars you've got on you? Oh, is that a nebula down there? What were your parents' quirks? How did you?" Nova found herself leaning back into the boy with the hood, overwhelmed. "Is she always like this?" she asked him. The boy, Sunny-Ater, sighed. "Yeah. Quit off, Hato." "I'm sorry." The girl backed away. "That's all right. I know I must be funny looking." Nova had been born with skin that looked like a bright, vibrant night sky, complete with all kinds of stars and galaxies and celestial bodies on certain parts of her like tattoos. It was even in her eyes, and when she got emotional, her sky began to drift like a time-lapse. "I never knew my parents, to answer one of your questions," she said to the girl. "But my unique look did help me, well, in the business I'm in. At least it made me pretty well off before the war." "Ah." The girl's face twitched. "You are a sec worker, aren't you?" "Well, yes." Nova could have sworn that the boy's grip on her faltered a little. She didn't dare look at his face to see if he was surprised or disgusted. "Well," said the girl, gently nudging one of the twins with her foot, "I won't ask questions about that. I'm Nijire-chan. That's Amajiki-kun behind you." Nova. "How old are you too?" "We're freshly graduated from UA. We've been put in charge of patrolling this entertainment district of Kijimi, along some of the pros like Mandalay, who spotted you from the roof over there." Nijire pointed across the boulevard to the top of one of the casinos. "This district certainly doesn't look very entertaining right now. Much of it is in disuse. In its heyday it was, Nova. Let's just say even a gal like me could make do. Lights and colors and elegance and a lot of money coming through. The mob always had a decent grip on the place, but with you heroes and the police pulling out after the war, it's back under control of scum like this, huh?" muttered Amajiki, looking down at the twins. "Don't you worry, ma'am. We're gonna get this place cleaned right up. Do you know of other places where innocent people could be hiding? We're trying to extract people to safety before we begin our operation against the mobs," said Nijire. "Well, I could," Nova cast a doubtful glance around. "But they'd come after me if they knew I talked." "Not to worry. We'll take you out of here for now. To a rally point. After that, you can come live at UA for a bit." It was the boy speaking. The young man, Amajiki. "Huh." Nova's starry eyes glimmered. "UA? But," she felt her own voice crack. "No, it can't be true." "It's true," Amajiki insisted. He seemed to grow more earnest, less nervous, looking her in the eye. "You won't have to work for food and shelter there. They're providing it for all civilians who enter. We swear it. Hero's honor. Hero's honor. Nijire echoed, with an imitation of a soldier's salute. At least, if that means anything to you anymore. I understand that it doesn't for many people. Nova had never put much stock in heroes. But these two were young. It felt different. Well, all right, she said airily weakly. But I'd still only be comfortable to give you more info if I was there already. And out of here. You two would be best to get moving quickly as well. The boss has eyes all over the place. Heard, said Nijire. She tapped a communication device in her ear. Mandalay, come tie these clowns up and get 'em clear. Sun Eater and I are gonna get this woman somewhere safe. There was a silhouette moving on the rooftop nearby. Nova winced, expecting the woman's voice to enter her head again, but it did not. All right, let's go, Nijire intoned, biting her lip. Yellow light flared up around her feet, and she seemed to be preparing to lift off. Nova blurted. I'm sorry, he said something about your scars. Her face faltered for only a moment. Then it was back to that bright smile. What do you expect from criminals? And up she went into the sky. Hada, wait, Amajiki hissed. But she was already going. Carry her, Sun Eater, her voice called back. Nova looked back up at the boy. He was a good deal taller than her. Can you fly too with those wings? She asked him. Yeah, it's how we got out here from the rally point in the first place, but I'm pretty new to it compared to Hado, so sorry if the ride's bumpy. Maybe you should get on my back or some tea. Nova threw her arms around his neck and kicked her legs up, forcing him to hold her bridal style. I'm good like this, she said, starry eyes glimmering a little. Sun Eater blushed deeply, but those great feathery wings began to flap, and up they went. He was trembling as he carried her, but Nova pretended not to notice. Soon, all she felt was the strength of his arms, and the sky's wind in her face. It felt like finally ascending out of hell. Nijire waited for Tamaki outside the small shelter, rocking back and forth on her toes. He emerged only a minute later than she'd expected, rubbing his arm sheepishly, back to total human form. His eyes looked everywhere but her face as he joined her on the sidewalk. Nijire whistled. She's safe and sound in there? Yeah. She seemed reluctant to talk to Gang Orca until we get her to UA, but that won't be possible until we have an official civilian transport. Too many dangerous areas between here and there for people to traverse on foot. Tamaki stumbled sideways, appearing exhausted. That mob seems scary if she's that afraid to talk until she's behind the fortress walls, Nijire mused. But that's what we're up against, I suppose. She stared off down the street, where the boundaries of Kijimi lay in the distance. Their district. Their responsibility. Mandalay said we did a good job. We saved one woman. One is better than none. And she'll lead us to more. Nijire looked back at her partner, smirking mischievously. Hey. She seemed to like how you carried her. That was her idea. Besides, she didn't know how old we were. Tamaki rubbed his arm in discomfort again. We did tell her we'd graduated. She assumed you were 18 or over, and she was right. Did she put pants on? Yeah. I made sure that was the first thing that happened. Ah, come on, Amajiki-kun. She was quite pretty, what with the space skin and all. She worked as an escort. Nijire raised an eyebrow. And they can't have aspirations of finding a nice dating partner like anyone else? That's you know that's not what I meant. His face reddened and he stammered. I just mean, she probably has a lot of trauma that I wouldn't want to resurface by, I don't know, flirting with her, or something. Yeah. I can see why you attempting to flirt would surface deep-buried trauma in any woman. When he gave her a murder look, Nijire held her hands up. Okay, sorry. I'm sorry, Amiki-kun. I was just teasing. Yeah, I know. He relaxed his shoulders again. Sorry. It went too far. Don't worry about it. The two of them stood in silence for a moment. Nijire half expected Gang Orca to bark more orders into their ears from the comms, but he did not. Busy questioning Nova, she supposed. They should let me question people. I'd be great at it. Tamaki noticed Mandalay approaching first, and stood up straight. Nijire saw her coming half a second later, and noticed her expression. Stricken. Her mouth opened and could only form one question. What happened, Mandalay-sensei? The auburn-haired heroine took her cat ears off her head and clenched them with white knuckles. There was an attack at Shiketsu High. A bombing. Izuku watched the building silently for over an hour. From this spot on the roof of the neighboring apartment, he could see all possible ways someone might approach it. The only someones had been police officers, quite a few of them going in and out at the start of the hour, but the crowd had thinned as they moved most of the civilians out to the shelters. The area was clear. It was safe and peaceful now. Danger sense, for once, was quiet. Now he just watched. Watched and waited. Killers like this, once they know they've been discovered, they can't help but go to stake out the reaction. Return to the scene. It's in their nature. He was making a gamble, a big one. Especially since he could already be patrolling some other area that was still unsafe by now, instead of lingering in this one that was now under police control. An area where he was needed. But I may be needed here. I'm gonna wait just a little longer. The one for all users were feeling some kind of emotion in his head. Something like disapproval. He ignored it. The city was quiet. It was nearly 5 in the morning, and there were streaks of light in the east, extremely faint. Izuku knelt on the edge of the rooftop, watching. Watching through his mask, his green eyes penetrating the area. Seeing everything. And just as he'd anticipated, expected, hoped, dreaded, a dark figure slipped out of the shadows between two buildings. Slim, hourglass figure, black-clothed. Masked up like Izuku, but unquestionably female. And crept into the building. Izuku stood up. Toga after all? He'd have to go down and see. Green lightning sparked out from his feet, and he prepared to fight. And I guess you froze. When the storm blew away her clothes. And you never got warm again. Izuku decided to deploy a smoke screen in advance of his entering the room again. Toga had the instincts of a street cat. If it was her, Izuku bet she noticed someone else was here the instant his boot made the slightest creak in the floorboards. She would try to hide in the shadows to get the drop on him. He had to turn the tables somehow. Give her a taste of her own medicine. If this was a cat and mouse game, then he would make whoever was in which role as ambiguous as he could. So in went the smoke, to obscure his own presence. He then floated up off the floor and hovered down the hallway, doing his best to maintain control. Nana imbued some kind of emotion into the side of his head, something like pride. It was her quirk that he'd been practicing the most besides Black Whip, and he definitely wouldn't have been able to do this a month ago. The smoke billowed up through the room where the Shiketsu woman had been murdered. Izuku figured that once Toga realized she was dealing with someone at least as intelligent as him, she might try to make a run for it, thereby exposing herself by making for the window, door, or air vent. Though, if she thinks my only quirk is the smoke, she might try to fight someone like that. Her most dangerous aspect was her unpredictability. He had to close the gap now. He floated down the hallway and right up to the doorway. The smoke obscured his vision too, but he could somewhat sense movements within it as it poured from his body. And right now, he couldn't sense a thing. Shadows leapt out at him. Police tape, the couch, abandoned tripods and equipment. Normally the force would have left someone behind to guard this, but they're so stretched thin tonight with trying to maintain their new order over the district, perfect time to return to the crime scene. Izuku's heart raced something fierce as he fully entered the room, hovering over the floor and rotating in a circle, looking at the billowing smoke all around him, seeing nothing alive, sensing nothing alive. But how could that be? They had to be in here. All his instincts were screaming at him to move, to take action, but he waited. Even with one for all, he had no durability quirk against knives. If Toga came at him fast enough from an unexpected direction, he'd bleed out and die like anyone else. He had to be on top of it. So where? Spinning around frantically. His boots touched the floor. The smoke began to dissipate. The room began to clear. His heart was about to leap out of his throat. There was simply no one here. The window was closed, the vent was closed, they couldn't have gone out the door without him noticing. Danger sense. It activated half a second before the dark feminine figure materialized next to the wall and swung a high kick toward his face. Izuku blocked it with his forearm and ducked low, swooshing under the next kick which came almost as quickly after. Hiya! Hiya! The girl spun at him, jabbing him with her dark-heeled boots. Izuku weaved sideways and sent out Black Whip to capture her. No knife. The girl sank low against the floor under his attack, unfolding into a split with an absurd talent, and suddenly she vanished again, with a hint of strange sparkles being the only indication that she was using a quirk to cloak herself. Izuku pounced forward to where she disappeared, and suddenly he was leaping into space. Oh god. All the past users screamed in panicked unison inside his head as he windmilled his arms, surrounded by a black starry void. The room, with just another slight dashing of sparkles, had transformed around him. He stomped with his feet against what he knew was the floor, and felt it, but there was nothing there beneath him. A blinding light shined from the left. Izuku lifted his arms up to shield his eyes, and felt a punch hit him from the right. Echich, the girl screamed. Danger sense was going haywire, confused. All the users were screaming in his ear. Updated intel indicated Toga could use the quirks of whoever's blood she drank. Izuku leapt sideways with a low percentage of 1 for all, accidentally hitting the couch, which was invisible in this space environment. So was the girl. He blindly shot Black Whip out in front of him and brushed against something. He quickly refocused it, the tendril following where he thought the girl was moving. A banging sound. The space environment shimmered as if glitching out, and then with another smattering of sparkles. A new illusion. Izuku was inside some kind of weird fleshy tunnel, pulsating rubbery pink surfaces all around him. It looked like the inside of an intestine. He spun in place, raising his fists up, and then slammed them both down against the ground, sending out 10 tendrils of Black Whip out in all directions, probing for anything. He felt one of them wrap around the wooden leg of the couch, and anchored himself to that, yanking himself backwards through this freaky vessel of an environment. The girl leapt down on him from above, and this time, danger sense prepared him in time. He felt her legs lock around his neck, and moved with her, rolling and letting her carry him round until he used the momentum and greater weight of himself to grab her and pin her against the ground. The illusions vanished with a dazzle. The dark room returned as the girl struggled beneath him, her legs tangling to kick him off as she cried out and spat. Izuku laid his forearm across her torso and activated 1 for all lightly. Lightning zapped through him, and the girl lost her breath, getting the wind knocked out of her from the subtle increase in pressure application. She was in a dark, skin-tight black suit, with a ski mask over her face. He reached up and swept the mask off, and gasped, taking a staggering step back and slackening his grip. In that moment, she kicked herself free almost gracefully, and hopped backward away from him, crouching and staring at him with a mixture of fury and fear. Backing away. It's the face from the license exam. I was so caught off guard that Izuku stepped forward, looming, making himself look intimidating. So that's what her quirk does, huh? Illusions. Clever. You still had a bit of her blood left, Himiko Toga? Himi. The girl's brown eyes widened, and she gasped angrily. I'm not that crazy chick, she snarled, circling around the chair, staying opposite to him. You attack me like that again, and I'll show you a nightmare. Those sparkles danced around her full lips. Returning to the scene of the crime. I knew that if I waited around I'd catch you. Izuku matched her sideways movements around the central chair, which was now vacated of the body. He would not give her an out to the doorway. She was twitching, clearly ready to spring into an escape. I'll bring you to justice. Justy, you think I did this? Hell to the no. I'm here to figure out the a-hole that killed Mikuno-san and give them a taste of their own freakin' medicine dash. Wait, huh? Izuku stopped, his mind briefly going blank. Shiketsu. The license exam. Shiketsu. Are you? He coughed, muttering. For some reason, he thought he could feel Nana smirking at him in the mindscape. Are you perhaps the real Kami Utsushimi? Huh. She suddenly stood up straight out of her crouch, relaxing her arms and legs a bit, but her eyes were still searching him, on edge. Yeah? Well. Izuku sniffed. He didn't know what to say. I'm sorry for assuming you were. I'm sorry. He felt himself grow red under the mask. Lovely. After all this, I ran into the most embarrassing person I could possibly run into. Atsuhime stepped forward and narrowed her eyes at him. Why would you assume I was her? They told me she impersonated me at the licensing exam, which I was knocked out during, but you know my name, you can't be a student. Oh, actually I am. Or I was, anyway. I'm Izuku Midoriya. For some reason his mouth was going dry. In her slightly annoyed curiosity, she had taken several steps toward him. After being scared of me just a second before. Had his demeanor shattered that much from freaking out and apologizing? Oh, your Bakugo and Todu's friend. Atsuhime raised an eyebrow. They told me about you at the remedial classes. They did? Well, that's actually where I heard your name from, too, from them, because they mentioned that you were there, I mean the real you, and Todoroki knew I had run into, well. It doesn't matter. Izuku nearly unleashed his trademark nervous squeak at the end. Oh, Nana was giggling inside his mind now. Shut up, please, he begged her. Cammy made an O face with her lips and tapped her chin. Did that beach attack you while wearing my skin or something, dude? You're like bugging TF out. Is my face traumatizing to you? I can put the mask back on if you want. No. I mean that's not necessary. Well, if you want you can. It's just, he waved his hands frantically, feeling himself plunge deeper and deeper into an inescapable mess. Toga attacked me. While impersonating you. I actually feel the need to apologize. May as well get it out of the way, and as sincerely and as straightforward as possible. Izuku bowed low. I technically saw you naked, Atsuhime-san, without your consent. Since she was... Atsuhime whistled. She tried to stalk you before killing ya or something, right? Using my body. Well, I don't know if killing me was her goal, exactly. I mean it makes sense. This body I've got is pretty bangin'. Izuku looked up from his bow. She had her hands on her hips, and was staring at him as if expecting him to laugh. Under the mask, he was just growing more and more red. Thank God she can't see it. Okay, that joke was dumb, Atsuhime muttered. Sorry about that. She looked over at the empty chair. I've basically tried to get over what happened to me. Get past it with jokes and stuff. And it's been mostly working. But now we're here and well. Her face twitched. Atsuhime-san. Izuku took a step closer. Were you at Shiketsu when it? Yeah. She nodded. That's why I'm after whoever this MF is. She used the abbreviation, actually sounding out the letters themselves. They killed some of my friends. I wasn't just gonna sit on my butt in the shelter and wait dash. Atsuhime, did you sneak out? Actually, as a matter of fact, how did you even know that this murder happened? And that the murder and the bombing are connected? And that there was even something here at this random building to find? Izuku looked down and saw something dangling from a tight belt at her hip. A device. Cammy bit her lip, at least having the sense to look contrite. Oh, don't give me that look, masked guy. Midoriya or whoever you are. Yeah, I've been listening in on the police frequencies. Trying to figure out anything. I got lucky I was even in the area to pick up the messages on the scanner, but I also didn't expect some nutso like you to be here, so you fight like you're possessed, dude. What the hell is your quirk? I have more than one, Izuku said plainly. Still weird to just be open about it. Your illusions aren't half bad either. But Atsuhime, Todoroki and Kaken said you passed the remedial tests. What are you doing out here, eavesdropping on police, acting as a vigilante would? Get off your high horse, Midoriya. I have my license on me. Then you should be working with the people who... No. Can't trust any of these morons. Cammy knelt down and began to inspect some of the evidence bags that had been left behind. You weren't at the bombing, my guy. Maybe everything's been sunshine and rainbows for you, but things are falling apart here. Can't trust anyone. Gotta act on my own. You don't know what things have been like for me at all, Izuku muttered. Where'd you even learn to eavesdrop on police scanners? They teach you that at Shiketsu, or somewhere else. He didn't know why, but something about her made him paranoid, even though he knew she was a hero. Student. Atsushimi picked up a bag off the floor and swept back upward, stepping forward and getting close to his face, looking up at him with a sneer. You want to get into it again, buddy? Don't act like you're cleaner than me. At the very least, the second years at Shiketsu had the authority to go out on patrols. But you're not on a patrol, you're on a path of revenge dash. If you're Bakugo and Todu's classmate, then you're a first year. Or you're at the end of your first year, and you're not supposed to be out here either. Izuku looked down at her. Even with her teeth bared like that, it was quite dizzying to have a pretty girl in his face. Cammy tilted her head. What? Nothing to say? You're quite close to me. Her eye twitched and she took a step back. Izuku was sure that the dashing of red he saw across her cheeks was just a trick of the low, shifting light in the room. I do have permission to be out here, for what it's worth, he said. I'm the one Shigaraki and all for one are after. Her eyes widened. Multiple quirks, you're him. The All Might's successor. So news of him had even spread to Shiketsu. That's right. I'm on this case because I have reason to believe the culprit may attack other schools next. Even UA, where there are people I need to keep safe. Anyone who knows who I am could end up as a target for them. So you need to stay away from me and stay away from this case. Atsushimi had a sour, dry expression. The big kahunas aren't gonna come after me just because I had one interaction with your angsty butt. Get a grip. Besides, you can't keep me off this case. I could pick you up right now and fly you back to Shiketsu. God, but was that difficult to get out without stuttering or blushing at the thought of it? Come off it, that. I don't think you walk what you talk, now that I take a closer look. She narrowed her eyes as if staring deep into his own. Besides, right now I have a lead and you don't. A lead? Izuku took a too eager step forward. Oh, Jesus, N groaned inside his head. Kid, you're an idiot, Banjo echoed. Cammy's lips curled up into a smile. She was way too alluring when she smirked like that, he decided. It was a great effort not to punch himself in the head. She lifted the plastic bag up tantalizingly. Targeting other schools, huh? I read the message on this little note that the freak left. Inside was indeed the message that Izuku had found in the air vent earlier. But then there's this symbol. This whittle symbol on the bottom here. She poked at the business card-like object taped to the bottom of the paper. On it was the golden symbol with the two concentric circles connected to a triangle. And you don't know what this means, do you? It won't take long to find out, Izuku managed. The stutter again, of course. Yes, it will. Her smirk deepened. Her eyelids lowered, and he saw how long her lashes were. Trust me, I know it will. Because I know what this is. They don't let this symbol slip out to just anywhere for anyone. And the fact that our culprit is connected to this lot. She whistled again. You're definitely gonna need some help on this case. I can get help from elsewhere. Our culprit? Atsushimi-san, I'm out here because I have to keep moving from place to place, since I'm a massive target, but that doesn't apply to other people our age. Including you. You shouldn't be out here. I will tell you what this symbol means if you promise to form an alliance with me. Her eyes glimmered victoriously. And promise that we'll take the next step together. Because trust me, you will need my help. Mine specifically. Alliance? Together. Izuku's head spun. No, you can't keep up. If you come with me anywhere, if you stay with me for too long, you'll die. I can't. I can't let anyone from Class A die. She's not from Class A. She's from a different school. Those were the other users. Izuku shifted uncomfortably. He'd promised himself he would not involve any of his classmates in any of this. But Atsushimi wasn't his classmate. He looked into her eyes again. Pretty, he mused, swallowing the lump in his throat with more than a little effort. A pretty girl wanted to form an alliance with him. Even after all this, he was incapable of acting like an adult. Oh, you're so cute, Ninth Nana teased. Go on, accept. I don't think she's lying. About her knowing what the symbol means or even about it being important to the case. We can see it in her eyes. He opened his fist and closed it. Fine, he muttered. Cammy's smirk expanded into a toothy grin. Sweet. Anyway, this is the symbol of the Hojo crime family. They're a mob outfit based in the Kijimi Entertainment District in the northern part of the metropolitan area. A mob outfit? Izuku's jaw dropped. So, that means… if they're backing this culprit of ours, it could be trouble. She pursed her lips and seemed to stare off at nothing for a moment. Plus, this was left behind on purpose, so if you say went to Kijimi to have a little talk with the Hojos, you could be walking into a trap. Then her eyes brightened again. Which is why you need an illusionist. The crop of homeless and junkies that were hiding in the karaoke bar all heard the voice at the same time. Stay calm, all of you. We will be there in moments. Some of them barely reacted. Some of them screeched with terror and cowered in the shadowy corners. Others just looked up and around in confusion. Then, the doors burst open, and in came Nijire and Tamaki. Wah! Heroes? Heroes? No, stay away. Are they here too? Nijire picked up snippets of conversations as some of the squatters walked or crawled toward Tamaki and her. Others retreated further into hiding, terrified. There was a lot of incomprehensible babble. Tamaki tightened his grip on his hood, eyes darting around nervously. It's like turning over a muddy log in the forest and exposing the bugs to the sun, he muttered. Emaciated, ragged-looking people swarming everywhere. Hello, everyone, Nijire announced, carefully trying to balance her peppy tone with a calming one. We are here to help. We're going to get you all out of here, okay? To prison, most likely, someone snarled. Nijire shook her head. No. To safety. Mandalay entered behind them. The idea had been to let Nijire and Tamaki go in first, so as to maybe not scare all the junkies so much. It was possible they'd recognize Mandalay from TV, but not so much the teens fresh out of UA. Indeed, when some of them laid eyes on the auburn-haired woman, they hissed and backed off. It's her. It's the voice. She's been talking at me for weeks. She's a pussycat. Shoo, Mandalay used her quirk soothingly over the room. Nijire blinked her eyes sleepily, and goosebumps crawled over her body. Next to her, Tamaki shuddered and blushed. She noticed many of the squatters blushing too. Mandalay walked toward the center of the room, her brightly colored costume contrasting with the gray of the junkies' rags. We are here to help, she told them. She began leaning down in front of individual people and telepathing to them personally. This was also part of the plan. Nijire and Tamaki got to work. Start with the easiest ones. Hello. Nijire said brightly to a man who was standing near the front. If you would come with me, please? Need. Tamaki stammered out to another person nearby. The man eyed Nijire with some wariness. No arrest? He asked carefully. Nijire shook her head. I promise. And what's your promise worth? Don't trust them, a woman hissed. We should call the harbor. No. Wait. PL, please comply. Tamaki finally got out, to the other person. Mandalay stood up from an emaciated man and looked down the hallway, away from the somewhat posh bar area and down toward the many private karaoke rooms. This place might take a while to clear out, she said with a sigh. Time we don't have. I'm calling in the backup. Huh. Tamaki paled. No, Mandalay-san, why dash? Mandalay had already telepathed to the police outside, and when they came bursting in, everything turned to chaos. The junkies scattered like ants, screaming and shouting. One kicked Mandalay in the shins to scramble away. She cursed and tried to transmit again, please. We are not here to arrest you. For all the good that it did. The police began to grab people and drag them or carry them outside. Wait. Nijire urged. She turned back to the man she'd been talking to, who was now backing away with a betrayed expression. Wait, please come with me willingly, I promise that we're… Damn it. Tamaki had put his hood over his face and was backing off toward the exit, muttering under his breath. Then one of the squatters shouted, I'm calling them. I'm doing it. And pressed something on their wrist. A strange alarm sounded from their wrist. Nijire gasped. Some kind of alerting quirk? Mandalay whirled, her cat ears nearly falling off her head. Her narrow eyes bugged out. Oh bloody hell, she said. Men with guns burst into the building from behind, and the brawl began. In the aftermath, Nijire blew feathers out of her hair. "Stupid chicken quirk," she muttered as police sirens bathed her face, and people were escorted past on stretchers. They were not quite back to the shelter, but they were walking that way. Walking. It was nice to walk. They had managed to carve a foothold in Kijimi down 3 major streets, all the way up to that karaoke bar in question. Mandalay walked up and stretched her arms behind her back. Nijire thought it looked so very cat-like that she was almost motivated to assault the pro-heroine with more questions, but managed to hold it back. "Yeesh," Mandalay commented, relaxing and popping her neck. There was a bit of dried blood running down her leg. "You did well there, Nijire-chan. We got all the civilians out safely largely thanks to you. Carrying people with my quirk is getting easier," Nijire commented. "Though they're still pretty heavy. It's crazy that you fight with your legs bare like that, sensei. In that shallow skirt." Ugh. Mandalay looked down. "That's not my own blood." Nijire paled. Oh. She'd had Mandalay in her mind as something like a lynx or a puma, but perhaps she was more like a tiger. "But do you not get worried about people looking up your skirt at all?" You mean like those guys in there? I'm capable of handling myself. And beauty and allure has its uses, Nijire-chan. As I'm sure you've discovered, you and I can use it to put people like that at ease. They're more likely to trust us." "I see." Mandalay was quite good at ignoring her scars. "So you think ugly people can't be as good at rescuing?" Mandalay frowned. "I didn't say that, it's just—" "Oh, I'm just teasing, sensei. I know what you mean. I think—" Nijire tapped her chin. "Say, that karaoke bar was pretty neat. I bet it was a cool place to visit in its heyday. Not when there's drags from the harbor running through it." The harbor was the other major operation in Kijimi along with the Hojos, which Nijire had recently learned. The two outfits were in contention with each other for control of the territory. Those guys we captured who gave us the hint. The ones who were harassing Nova-chan. They worked for the Hojos, right? They'd had to question them instead of Nova herself, since she was refusing to talk until they got to UA. Questioning the twins was surprisingly easy when you had Gang Orca on your side. He was scary. Yep. They probably sent us to a harbor-controlled area on purpose. They want us and the harbor to whittle each other's forces down so they can come out on top. Mandalay blew a strand of hair out of her face. "Oh, I see. That's smart." Nijire looked at another stretcher go past. It had one of the gangsters on it. "Well, we didn't lose any people, did we? Only a couple of officers got injured. And we made like a dozen arrests. Plus we saved a bunch of people. And did that make it worth it?" Tamaki hissed from her other side. Nijire whirled abruptly. She'd forgotten he was there. Mandalay looked at the pointy-eared young man nervously. "Sun Eater, if you're going to be a pro, you have to learn to understand situations like that." "We could have handled it," he muttered. "You had no right to bring the police in there. It freaked them out and caused that person to use their quirk to call for the harbor guys. Those guys were protecting them, bringing them food and stuff. And we'll do the same, only we'll rehabilitate them as well. I don't believe it. I bet some of them will end up in prison anyway." Tamaki was furious. Nijire had never seen him like this. "Sun Eater, sometimes you have to make hard decisions like that when you know that ultimately the outcome will be. We could have avoided the fight entirely. I don't want to hear it." He stormed off, getting ahead of the two women. Mandalay looked at Nijire somewhat helplessly. "I'm sorry, sensei. I'll talk to him later," Nijire offered. "No, that's all right." Mandalay had a dark look on her face. "He has a point, I suppose. Think I'm just getting old." "Oh, sensei, you look great." The cat heroine chuckled lightly. "Thank you, Nijire. But I just mean, my attitude. That kind of stuff is what we were taught to do when I was your age. Call the police and once you've got the crowd calmed down. It made sense to me at the time. But now, with the state the country's in, I wonder how many villains we were creating by running the show like that." She looked up at the sky. "You kids are gonna have to do something else. And maybe you already understand that. Growing up in times like this." "I'm sorry, Nijire." Nijire's face twitched. Her scars felt itchy. She forced a smile. Ah, don't worry about it, Mandalane. We're gonna get out of this crazy apocalypse thing. One street at a time. I hope so, dear. Mandalay's sigh was full of years. Let's report back to Orca. The sniper was back again. Izuku sensed the first shot coming and decided to dodge downward, a direction he'd never gone in to avoid the attacks. The bullets were like missiles. Sometimes they curved and followed him around corners. I reckon they curve at the start of their trajectory, too, he thought, ricocheting around the side of a building using Black Whip and One for All. The bullet struck the building's bricks, kapow. Izuku bounced back and forth off the walls of a narrow alley, staying low and in the shadows. Waiting for the next shot. Maybe I got out of sight. Usually he had to evade about 3 or 4 shots before he was in the clear. The sniper had come several times since he'd set out from UA. He'd never once seen the actual person, so he suspected they had exact control over the bullet's trajectory. They always came from different directions, and Izuku was always so panicked with trying to dodge them that he had never quite managed to try and triangulate the person's position. Another one whizzed close. He leapt upward with 20% OFA, high above the rooftops, briefly spinning in a circle to see if he could see anything. Too fast. Nope. Nothing. It was all a blur, and the bullet was coming again. He shot Black Whip around a telephone pole near the ground and yanked himself toward it at high speed. The third user whispered, "Not gonna use my quirk yet?" "You said it was only for desperate situations," Izuku thought back. The bullet hit another building, neutralized. Every time you encounter this person, they learn more about you. But you have learned nothing about them. Izuku shook his head, muttering as he leapt in a random direction across town. There was not a third bullet. He must have cleared enough distance. I don't have time to deal with a sniper. If they're so focused on me, then that means they're not attacking others. And it's others I'm worried about, because there are other villains out there who do intend to hurt them. It's those villains I have to fight right now, to save as many people as I can. But if a villain is so fixated on you, like this sniper is, then don't you think that means they were sent by All for One? Izuku swallowed. He flattened his mouth and kept looking forward. Well, I won't possibly find them now, he thought. Already got too far away. But next time. If there was a next time. If the sniper attacked him again, he would actually try to get close to them. Because User 3 had a point. They might know something about AFO or Shigaraki. And that info was invaluable. A few minutes later, it began to rain. Izuku ignored it, continuing to patrol as the sky darkened and the precipitation intensified. He rescued 12 more people. He defeated a gang of hooligans and one standalone villain with some kind of velocity quirk. Making his way through the city. Business as usual. One of the people he rescued gave him their umbrella, which was weird, but he just strapped it to his back and went on. As he worked, he thought about Kami Utsushimi. As much as he was trying not to think about her, she filled his mind. They had planned to do their operation in Kijimi next week. Izuku could get anywhere pretty easily, but he had no idea how she planned to meet him there. I suppose she has her ways. Why did she know so much about an organized crime outfit? Yakuza by the sound of them, much like Overhaul's crew. And monitoring a police scanner, acting a vigilante? Even her hero costume looked like one a cat burglar might wear. What's her deal? You're quite intrigued by her, aren't you? Nana teased. Shut up. Izuku blushed. There was certainly no time to think about stuff like that. Which is why he was so annoyed that every time his mind drifted, he thought of her. He'd never been very good with girls. In middle school, the idea of him even having a chance with one was unthinkable. Maybe things had been slightly different at U. He had often felt strange about Uraraka, and Tsuyu, and even Jiro had caught his eye a couple of times from just acting as cool as she was. But there was no time for that at UA. And there's no time now. Besides, no matter how much this girl or that girl from Class A made his heart flutter, the idea of dating them, of growing to care for them too much, and then having them dragged into this conflict, he couldn't bear to think of it. That was part of why he'd made his promise. But Utsushimi is not from Class A. Leave it alone. A few hours after the sniper encounter, down below on the street, through the rain, he saw something that caught his eye. It was another little gang of dudes harassing someone. A woman. Izuku encountered many such cases, and usually dealt with them accordingly. Only this one was different because the woman was a mutant. A massive one at that. She had to be over 10 feet tall and maybe as many as 15. At a glance, Izuku thought she might be sort of like a fox. But no, that wasn't right. A dolphin? He descended, and as he did, he picked up the conversation. Stay away from us, monster. Ack. The mutant woman squeaked. I'm sorry, I was just, no harm. Trying to let our guard down, huh? One of the men had some kind of projectile quirk that he was preparing to fire. Izuku zoomed in. Please calm down, he urged, holding his arms up between the mutant and the three men. He could see now that the men were scared of her. It was not the usual situation. He had to handle it differently. It's a rainy night, tensions are high, but this woman is not your enemy. He told the men. Please deactivate your quirks. Slowly they did so, backing away. It's him, one of them muttered. She should stop acting so suspicious, then. Bloody mutant. They slinked off into the shadows, disappearing down the street past flickering lamplights. The rain made it hard to see where they went off to. Izuku sighed. He was conflicted about letting them go. Did they hurt you, ma'am? He asked, turning to the mutant woman. No, they were just scared like me, I guess. The woman's voice was weak and shaky. She was wearing a massive backpack and clothes that seemed rather tight for her, showing a rather curvy figure. Izuku coughed, grateful once again for the mask. Yeah, I'm sorry, ma'am. Usually when I see a group of guys harassing a girl while on patrol, it's for something else, so I didn't really react great there. I just thought maintaining peace would be the best option. Maybe I shouldn't have let them go after all. He turned back to look at the place where they'd disappeared. And no, that's okay. I thought you handled it well. The woman tightened her grip on her backpack, and Izuku noticed she had little fangs that poked out over her lower lip. Or snout. Or something. Are you a hero? Yes, ma'am. I'm Deku. I don't see many mutants out and about anymore. It's sort of been an ongoing question with our operations, actually. Where they've all gone. He didn't want to mention to this woman that most of the mutants he had seen were acting as muscle for organized crime operations. I'm sorry, this was actually the first time I've saved someone like you from a situation like that. I didn't react very well. Again, I'm sorry. He decided to bow. He felt really bad. The woman sniffled, but she also giggled a little, wiping her snout with a claw-like, furry hand. It's all right, really. You're quite polite, Mr. Deku, considering how scary your hero costume is. Oh, yeah, Izuku looked down at himself. His costume was soaked. Well, that would be a problem for later. What's your name, ma'am? I'm Kitsune. Irika Kitsune. And you don't have to call me ma'am. I'm probably younger than you. I'm not yet 17, ma'am. Oh, you'd just be a couple of years behind me in school. Then Irika's eyes widened. Were you in school? Why didn't you make it to a shelter? Irika seemed to retreat into herself a bit. I felt safe in this town for a while, so I thought I could just sit it out until everything blew over, but then the casualties began to get reported and I don't know. I was too scared to move, but I tried to run for the evacuation center, but now I'm stuck out here. She fluttered her long eyelashes. She looked so sad with the rain soaking through her clothes. Izuku's heart skipped a beat, and he suddenly remembered the umbrella he had strapped to his back. So distracted by her that I'm messing up left and right. Nana was smirking at him again, he just knew it. Izuku opened the umbrella and floated up to get eye level with her. He pointedly ignored that he could see her bra through her shirt now. Wonder what size it is? Nana asked. Get lost. He growled at her and offered the umbrella to Irika. Everyone else is scared to... You're not alone, Kitsune-san. She gasped, with slightly stunned eyes as she slowly took the umbrella from him. Thank you, she mumbled. Was that a blush on her cheeks? It was hard to tell with how she looked. Izuku felt himself blushing too. First Utsushimi, now this girl? He called All Might. Just a few minutes later, the armored black car drove up, and Tashinori stepped out of it, using his own umbrella. Izuku looked back at his mentor. Take Kitsune-san here back to you. She needs shelter as soon as possible. All Might gaped at the woman. I can do that. She might have to crouch a bit, though my back seat is spacious, but… That's all right, Irika muttered, bowing. Thank you for the ride. And for everything. She looked back at Izuku, half hopefully. Are you coming too? No, I've got to keep moving. You'll be safe with All Might. Huh. Irika nearly jumped into the air with surprise. All in the who now? She looked frantically back at Toshinori's thin, gaunt form. He just grinned dryly back at her, and then turned to Izuku. I can't get her all the way to you right now, Midoriya. There's some streets that are dangerous even for my car. I'll take her to a way station. A way station? Yes. Some have been set up in a wide radius around the shelters. He turned back to Irika. You'll have to wait for an organized convoy to be set up for you and other civilians to actually make it all the way to UA, but the way station is reasonably safe. This particular one is under the charge of Gang Orca. Gang Orca? Oh, I like him. Irika closed her eyes and smiled, pressing her hands together in front of her chest. Another ocean mutant. That actually makes me feel quite relieved. Speaking of dangerous streets, Izuku said to All Might, I encountered the sniper again. Lovely, Toshinori muttered. Anything new? No. But I think I'm going to try and capture her next time. She only tracks and targets me. It might be that All for One sent her. She. All Might tilted his head. You think it's a woman? How do you know? I saw her. Once, Izuku lied. He didn't want to say that he'd recovered one of the bullets the time before last, and saw that it was made of hair. And the hair had smelled like women's shampoo. He was sure All Might would take such a thing in stride, but he felt weird bringing it up with Irika standing there. You know when your ears heat up and get all red, we can all feel it? Yoichi told him dryly. Sorry, Izuku thought back. All Might was musing. A female sniper. Something about that sounds, I don't know. Izuku tilted his head. You have a suspicion. A memory is pulling at me. I'll have to look into it. Need to talk to Genist and Hawks. Well, I'm off then. No, Midoriya, wait. I almost forgot. All Might reached back into his car and pulled out a covered plastic box. This is Katsudon. When was the last time you ate? Izuku blinked. Yesterday. His stomach, on cue, growled. Of course. He heard the past users all laughing. Irika gasped. That's not good, Mr. Deku. You need to eat. All Might smiled, but there was a slight anxiety to his grin. So I've been telling him, young lady. He handed the box over. Thank you for the food, Izuku said earnestly. He was quite hungry. It was just hard to find the time sometimes. Please take care of yourself, Midoriya. Something was glimmering in Toshinori's sunken blue eyes. I'm serious. I'm very serious. I know. I will. I promise. He tucked the box under his arm and prepared to leap off into the… You be careful to… Get her to the place and he turned to Irika briefly. It was nice to meet you, Kitsunsen. I'll keep working to make your town safe again. And then you can return and live peacefully. This time, she was clearly fully blushing, the red reaching the tips of her tall pointy ears. Thank you, Mr. Deku. It was nice to meet you too. And then he was gone, a glowing green streak zooming away in the storm. Maybe we'll meet again, she whispered, watching the green light wink out in the distance. Kami waited until the last possible moment to jump down on Wakamaru Hojo. The broad-shouldered young man was coming around the street corner, talking into his phone in a rapid, annoyed tone. They don't care if you have to threaten the plumbers. They'll have to get used to threats in this new world. We need that water to work, or else people will find somewhere else to go. I understand. My uncle will find the money you need. Stop your worrying. Get to work dash. She plummeted down from the ledge and delivered a kick to his shoulders. Wakamaru, for his credit, had the reflexes of a well-built organized criminal. At 24, he was much taller than her and certainly at the peak of his physical abilities. But he had no hero training. And she intended to use that to her advantage. Gah! He spat when she landed the hit, but he immediately pushed himself sideways toward the wall, cleverly, choosing to sacrifice his phone with a throw to the pavement. Cammy followed up with another driving kick, and when he dodged this one and made to grab her leg, possibly throwing her into the wall, she blew out smoke and activated her quirk. Wakamaru's eyes widened when he realized. A sashimi. Bloody nuisance. You've got some nerve coming back here. Cammy made herself invisible in the new illusion environment, covering the street corner with fake fire and brimstone, turning into a cartoonish hell. Wakamaru kept his hand pressed against the now invisible wall behind himself, anchoring there. Lowering her points of approach. I'm too smart for you now, little girl, he snarled. You made me break my DMN phone. Cammy threw her voice like she trained at Shiketsu to mask her position. Your daddy can buy you a new one. Not in this environment. We're struggling for our footing just like everybody else in this apocalypse. Is that why you're back? You looking for some more work? I have some. It starts with you, as a matter of fact. Wakamaru grinned. Then come get it, dear. He lifted his hand and pointed out away from the wall, and started moving his hand all over, pointing his finger in different directions. Cammy gasped and ducked and rolled, dodging. She thought in an instant, I have to close the distance now before he... Too late. His quirk activated on her, and she got forcibly yanked forward through the air, smacking into him with a cry and getting stuck there. Her illusion shimmered out. Wakamaru pushed against her head with a massive, meaty hand as she materialized against him. Found you, you little twerp. Say goodnight, Dash. Let go of her. Midoriya cried out, jumping down from the ledge. Wakamaru gasped and looked up. What the? In an instant, Cammy had been swept off, the pain and pressure being applied to her ebbing away. Replaced with a thrilling warmth, the green sparks echoing around her as Midoriya pulled her back, carrying her bridal style. Just for a moment, before he put her down on her feet, making her windmill her arms to stay upright with how fast he was there and gone again. Blast of wind accompanying his speed. Her heart raced. Wakamaru tried to activate his quirk again, but without any part of Midoriya's skin exposed, it didn't work the way he'd intended. You're the green demon they've been talking about. Midoriya closed the distance with a swing of one of those black whips, anchored to the fire escape on the wall above them, and then delivered a sharp kick to Wakamaru's head. The young man immediately went slack-jawed, falling limp to the ground, unconscious. Midoriya landed next to him, brushing his raggedy green costume off, and then looked back at Cammy. Are you all right? He asked her, genuine worry in her voice. Cammy flared her nostrils and stomped her foot. I was handling it. You let him see you. That was specifically what we were trying to avoid, remember? I'm sorry, I just thought you needed help. He was hurting you. She had to avert her eyes, pouting. Her arms instinctively crossed. Whatever. It's fine. Now we just have to go fast and hope he doesn't wake back up. The two of them headed back up onto the rooftop, carrying Wakamaru with them. They stood on the ledge, looking out over the entertainment district. It was an odd mixture of bright lights from still operating businesses, places where the Hojo family and the harbor were still breathing life, and areas that looked completely dark and abandoned. The sun was setting in the distance, leaving orange streaks across a shadowy city. Cammy moved like a silhouette, swaying her hips as she crossed the roof, looking down toward the club. Blue light beamed from the windows. Even from here, the bumping music was softly reaching their ears, carrying on the wind. Looks like he was heading there. To talk to his father, probably. His father? Midoriya swallowed. Is that the Hojo? No. His younger brother. Wakamaru's not the main heir. His cousin is. The head Hojo is his uncle. Right. Midoriya looked back down at the unconscious man. So I just have to pretend to be this guy. I mean, yeah. She turned and walked back over to him, getting close enough to where their chests were nearly touching, and tilted her head up to look him in the eye. You're the taller one. I pretend to be him, walk into the club like I own the place, request an audience with this guy's father. With your father, Cammy corrected. Start thinking like he'd think. Your father is the second most powerful person in the Hojo family. Best we could possibly do, really, since old Nair never shows his face anymore. If anyone knows about how this card could have gotten out to some random murdering BSD. She lifted the card they'd found at the crime scene up and handed it back to Midoriya. It's him. Midoriya took a deep breath. Will you be okay? We've already made contact with Wacky Waka down here, so it's too late to turn back and try another night. Yes, I know that. He exhaled. That's why I'm steeling myself up right now. Cammy curled her lips up into a smile. You know, for a guy who's so willing to jump into battle to save a girl, you sure do get nervous easily. This isn't exactly the T-type of mission I'm used to. Hey, if we want to catch that prick and protect your precious you, this is what we gotta do. She looked back over the city for a moment, the breeze picking up and tossing her dark blonde hair. And I'll be in your ear every step of the way, remember? She tapped the listening device attached to her lobe, then stepped forward and tapped his. Izuku fought not to twitch from the feeling of her finger hitting his ear. She's awfully close. And touch it. So, he said, now you've seen him. Can you make me look like him? She took a half step back and bit her lip, appraising him up and down in an analytical way. Izuku's heart fluttered a little. Yep. But I'll need you to take the mask off. Oh. Izuku hesitated. It wasn't like he had to conceal his identity from her. But still, he'd been keeping the mask on around everyone for quite some time now. It felt like there was some safety in it. Protection. Comfort. What had the Hojo man called him before he'd knocked him out? The Green Demon. Under this mask, that was what he was to criminals. But maybe to civilians too. Even as he fought to save everyone, he was alienating many of them. But the situation out here was too messy to do otherwise. Speed was what was required now, speed at cleaning the country up before it was too late. He would have to patch his reputation up later. Even so, now he had to show Cammy his face. So, with some trepidation that he couldn't even really place the origin of, he lifted the pointy-eared green mask up and off his head, then lowered the respirator away from his mouth. Cammy's reaction to seeing him was interesting. It occurred to him then that she'd never actually seen him before. It was hard to remember that, considering it was still difficult to divorce this Cammy from the Toga impersonation he'd met at the exam. In any case, her normally low, sultry eyebrows twitched upward, and her jaw seemed to relax as she appraised him. Her eyes darted around a little, as if searching his face. Izuku just stared back at her, waiting. After a moment, she just commented, "Your hair's kind of a mess, dude. Conditioner's hard to come by out here." Cammy sighed and stepped forward, looking down at his chin again where her eye level was. "Well, I'm going to disguise you now. Remember, my illusions aren't solid, and this guy's a little bigger than you, so I'm just going to put an illusion of his clothes and body over yours. People's hands will just pass through your outer layer, sorta kinda. So try not to let anyone touch you in there, 'kay?" "'Kay," Izuku echoed softly. Cammy looked up at his eyes again for a moment, cleared her throat awkwardly, and said, "Right. Here I go." She began to blow on him. A soft caress of air jettisoned from her mouth and tickled his chest. Izuku immediately closed his eyes and winced, knowing this was uncomfortable, but also just part of the plan and par for the course when it came to utilizing strange quirks to their full potential. "Phew." She moved across his body, covering him with the illusion smoke as it started pink and then solidified, covering him with a skin shield that matched the appearance of the unconscious man on the ground. Feeling that little push of air crawl over him made Izuku open his eyes again. Goosebumps. He had to fight not to shudder. It was, to his dismay, not entirely an unpleasant feeling. But if she figures out I feel that way, I'm dead. Maybe not, knife. She might be happy to hear it. "Oh, you pipe down." It seemed to him that she intentionally moved a little faster with her work as she moved down to his legs, having to of course cross his crotch area. He felt sweat on the back of his neck. His hero costume felt pretty tight all of a sudden. Cammy circled around to his back and blew all the way up it, all the way to his shoulders. It took what felt like several minutes as she covered his arms as well. Then she circled around to his front again and blew on his face. Very close. At first, Izuku kept his eyes fixated on a distant spot above the top of her head, But for some reason, the awkwardness of the situation reached such an apex that something in his mind went screw it, and he looked down to stare into her eyes as she blew. Her eyes widened a little, but she did not stop her work. Then again, while it seemed like she might have rushed herself when she was covering his lower body, when she reached his face it almost seemed like she was lingering a bit longer than she needed to. That's probably just my imagination. Phew. She finally stopped, lowering her palm from beneath her mouth and unpursing her lips. She stepped back a bit. Izuku felt the gooseflesh on his arms fade away. The spell had broken. Then, Kami pouted. What's the matter, Utsushimi-sen? Did it not work properly? Oh, please tell me it did. No, that's fine, it's just, she actually stammered. It just kinda SCKS that you have to look like this guy. He's like, totes uglier than you, just as you are. She seemed to intentionally look away and down at Wakamaru, giving his side a light kick. Oh, well, thanks? I think. Izuku reached up to scratch the back of his head, but then realized how the air back there around his body felt strange. Be careful with that, she hissed, looking back up at him in alarm. The illusion is stable, but not if you fiddle with it too much. I don't feel any different. There had been a pink aura in front of his eyes while she'd been blowing on his face, but he'd been too distracted to care, and then it had vanished. Was the illusion just not visible from the inside, now that it had settled? He lifted up his arms to look at them, and saw that they were now wider, hairier, and exposed. In place of his hero costume, which he could still physically feel on his body, he had the same white button-up with the sleeves rolled back that the unconscious man was wearing. This is weird, he muttered aloud. Kami laughed. I can imagine. You get used to it. At least if you do it a bunch. It's certainly a very useful power. He suppressed his urge to go on one of his quirk-excitable question rants. Say, what's this guy's quirk? The one he used on you. He pulled you to himself. Maybe one of my quirks can imitate it somehow. That would make no one doubt that I'm him. Wakamaru? He can pull two objects of the same material together by pointing directly at both of them. So like, if he points at his own skin and then at someone else's skin, he can drag that person over and force them together. I guess that's why it didn't work on you, since you have no exposed skin with that costume on. In that fight he was pointing blind, but he managed to target my face, I guess. Kami hugged herself around the torso and looked over at the club. You better get moving. Anything else you want to know about him? Just generally act like a jackass who thinks everyone's beneath him and you'll be fine. Act like old Kaken. Got it? Utsushimi-san, you do know an awful lot about these people. Their family connections. Their personalities. How their organization functions. Even their quirks. And that guy knew you. Yeah, that's all true enough. What do you have to say about it? Her voice had taken on a tense edge. Izuku didn't speak immediately. Meddling where you don't need to is the essence of being a hero. But that doesn't always apply to matters such as these, Nana Shimura told him. And especially if it's a woman you don't know very well. For once, he was thankful for Nana's input. That I'm not going to pry, Utsushimi-san. But thanks for letting me use your expertise to do this mission. Thanks for helping me. And, whatever your background, I'm glad you're here. Be becoming a hero and all that. Kami's arm fell from around her front, and she looked back at him for a moment. Her eyes shimmered, and her blonde hair moved in the wind. If you just want to call me Kami, I'm down with it, she said. Well, that hadn't been what he'd expected. Izuku opened his mouth, closed it again, and then opened it again, speechless. His brain short-circuited. She grinned good-naturedly, and then nodded her head down at the club. You'd better get a move on. I'll stay here and give Waka another kick if he stirs. And I'll chat up your ear too. She tapped her device again. Good luck, Midoriya-kun. You can call me Izuku, too, he thought, but didn't say aloud. He could only jump down into the mission, thankful that his very red real face was hidden under this false one, and cursing himself for getting so distracted by a girl when there was work to be done. Izuku reached the club entrance, the bumping music and flashing blue lights now assaulting his senses. There was a very short line of men and women in party attire outside, But when the two guys at the door saw him, their eyes widened and they waved him on forward. Waka! What's up, man? Yo, you're a little late, aren't you? Izuku shrugged. I got into it with the, plumbers. Then my phone got busted. Just using what literally happened with the real Wakamar, minus the knockout. One of the guards hissed through his teeth. DMN. That is this. You, putting on that accent for the plumbers, Waka? Didn't peg you as the type to talk sweet with him. Izuku shifted, trying to disguise his alarm. I have to make my voice deeper and more like a gangster's. Well, you know, sometimes I find it in me to be nice. Sometimes. The two of them chuckled darkly at that. Well, go on in. Your old man's waitin' for ya, I think. Izuku just gave them another nod and walked in, uncertain, trying to show confidence. He could feel people's eyes on him. He hoped it was just because they were afraid of this guy, or in awe of him. Inside the doors of the club, the music somehow seemed to get 10 times louder, if that was even possible. The lights flashed around the open floor as people danced, moved around standing tables, talked, held drinks. Silhouettes in party attire. It was a nice crowd, Izuku thought, but a far cry from the usual packed club scenes he was used to in movies, and closer looks at the suits the men were in and the too short dresses on the women showed that many of them were worse for wear. These people are in a dying land, and they're trying to distract themselves. The Hojo family seemed to be offering that distraction. Though, Izuku could see on the stairs and the upper balcony that circled this big, spacious room, a few armed guards here and there, dressed in all black. Watching with scrutiny. A few of them nodded at Izuku. He nodded back, then lowered his head and began to walk slowly around the outer edge of the club, hugging the wall, trying not to make eye contact with anyone. How am I supposed to hear you with this racket? He half yelled, barely able to hear himself over the music even. Midoriya, it's fine. These are right in our ears so it's no biggie. Also, don't shout please. I can hear you just fine. Oh, sorry. He could actually hear Cammy right in his ear better than he could hear himself. He kept moving, trying to keep his mouth movements to a minimum. So, where do I go? They told me my father's waiting for me. Well, to be honest, I've only been in there a few times. It's just a border club, it's not exactly Hojo HQ. But I would have to guess he'd be in the big private room upstairs. Should be a staircase at the far end leading ya up to the balcony. Yes. I see it. K. Izuku began to walk in that direction, but then from around the other side of a table close to the wall, someone moved to intercept him. A dark-haired woman with heavy makeup and a very short blue dress. Hey there, Waka. She reached for his sleeve before Izuku could react, and her fingers passed through the illusion. Izuku stepped backward frantically. Hey, whoa, the woman chuckled, maintaining a pretty smile, fluttering her long eyelashes. It's been a while, babe. Her hands flashed down to her fingers and then back to him. What's up? Did she notice? Could you tell? Her smile seemed fixated, as if frozen on her face. Izuku's heart was pounding. His mouth was going dry. Sorry. Gotta report into my old man. Already running late as it is. The woman tilted her head a bit, as if confused, or possibly suspicious. There was another woman and a man standing at the nearby table she'd just come from, and they were watching him strangely. Then, the woman narrowed her eyes and grinned. You're a bit jumpy round him, is it? What's the matter, Waka? Does he scar you? Izuku's mind spun to search for the proper reaction to this. He himself had a tendency to melt into stutters when a woman teased him like this. Unbidden, Cammy's face floated in his vision. Aya. But no, a guy like Waka might blow her off or get angry. We'll see who's scared before the end of the night, he muttered, forcing himself to sound tough. The woman closed her mouth. She backed away a hair, and although she was still smiling, Izuku could see terror in her eyes. What's this guy done to her before? He had to wonder. What? You'll see me after, maybe? Maybe, Izuku grunted. The woman shut her eyes and sheet. Before he knew it, she'd leaned in and kissed him on the cheek. Izuku fought to suppress his panic. The woman had leaned all the way back again before opening her eyes, So she must not have seen that her mouth had passed through his outer layer to kiss Izuku's real cheek. The woman bit her lip. You shaved? It doesn't look like it in this light. Later. See ya. She strutted back toward her table. Izuku watched her go for a moment, and realized in terror that those other people from the table were watching him too. Had they seen? She'd kissed him on the opposite cheek from the side they were on, but maybe it had still looked wrong. Too close of a call. Got to hurry. He turned away from their strange gazes with a show of a huff, and made his way toward the stairs. Did something happen? Asked Cammy. No, Izuku mumbled in response, unable to hear himself again as he crossed the floor, keeping his head down as he passed in between people and tables, music and chatter. Everything's fine. Just found out this guy is sort of a JRK, I think. That woman was terrified of me. Besides that, he'd just been kissed for the first time ever by someone who wasn't his mother, and it was some random woman. That made his heart race for a whole different reason. She seemed rather pretty, even though she had a lot of makeup on. Briefly, he allowed himself to imagine what later might mean. Even though he wasn't who she thought he was. He wondered if the illusion could hold through. Maybe she wouldn't mind if it didn't, and that he was himself. Maybe that would make her happy even. Midoriya, stay focused. It was as if Cammy had read his mind. I am focused. It's just, why couldn't we have just interrogated this guy about the card? Instead of me impersonating him? I'm sure he would have known something. Waka doesn't know shit about this, I almost guarantee it. What we're doing is our best bet. If you're sure. I'm about to head up to my father. He activated the comm link through a button on his wrist, so it was not obvious when he was using it, but Cammy also couldn't hear everything that was going on either. Remember that you're like, super strong. Stronger than Waka. You don't have to let that guy push you around if you don't want. Well, okay. That seemed like strange advice. Did Cammy have history with Wakamaru's father as well? I'm gonna hold the button while I talk to him, so you can hear everything. If you want me to say anything I'm not saying, just prompt it into my ear during a lull in the conversation. Sounds like a plan. Izuku climbed the stairs, passing by a pair of drunk-looking mobmen, then a few more guards. They all nodded to him. He nodded back. He hoped that was what Wakamaru would have usually done. Maybe he's more likely to ignore them? Well, shit. It was too late now, wasn't it? He made his way to one of the doors, the only one that had 2 guards outside. This had to be the private room that Wakamaru's dad, the second in command of the Hojos, was in, right? One of the guards stepped aside to open the door. He's ready for ya, the man said coolly. Izuku inwardly sighed in relief. He was in. The door opened, and inside was a luxurious lounge. Yellow crystal lights hung from the ceiling, reflected twice over in the floor-to-ceiling windows on the far side of the room. Art panels decorated the solid walls, and low, plush furniture was arranged in a rectangle pattern in the center. There was a small bar to the left, where a gray-haired man was pouring himself a drink. He was the only one here. Waka, the man grunted. You're late. Had some trouble with the plumbers, Izuku replied. He was very afraid that this man would know an impersonator of his own son, by the voice if anything else. But the music was still pretty loud in here, and the elder Hojo just shrugged. Uppity BSTRDS. Craftsmen have always been too full of themselves in my experience. He poured another glass besides his own and pushed it across the bar toward Izuku. Izuku looked at the bottle. He didn't know what it was. I can't drink alcohol. Not that he was such a stick in the mud that he wasn't willing to break a small law for this, but he doubted his ability to do it convincingly was the problem. I'd probably choke or something. Cammy should have done this herself. He held up a hand with a grunt, as if to show that he just wasn't in the mood for it right now, and sat down at the bar with his arms folded. Hojo gave him a confused look, then shrugged again and clinked his own glass against Izuku's. Then he drank. Tell ya what, Waka, he said with an exhale after lowering the glass from his mouth. I knew things turn out like this. Some guys in the outfit, they thought that with the nation in collapse, everyone'd come together. People'd put aside their differences and help each other out. I knew it'd be the exact opposite. As things get worse, so do the people. Lean into their worst traits. The people who provide things like water and shelter, they should be less selfish now, not more. But here we are. A mob outfit that can't even threaten plumbers to do our bidding. He walked around the outside of the bar, taking his drink with him to the backside of a couch. Pa. Maybe we'll just have to go in person, Izuku said. Hojo raised an eyebrow. Don't be a fool, boy, he drawled. Even though Izuku wasn't actually this guy's son, he still felt like shrinking back. You know what's got your uncle spooked? There's heroes in the area. They've been targeting the harbor for the past week, which seems good for us now, but Neru's convinced they'll come for us too. Blah. World falls apart under their watch, and just when we manage to find a situation where we can thrive again like the old days, they decide to come try and clean us out. Because you're keeping people hostage here, Izuku thought. Establishing militant control. And worse. It must get worse. He flexed his fist. Not what I'm here to do. Not what I'm here to do. Kami prompted him. Suggest that maybe the heroes are just after the harbor since they're deeper into illegal drags. Maybe it's just the drags they're after, Izuku suggested. That's why they're only going after the harbor. They did do that raid on the 8 precepts last year. That was 'cause of drags. Maybe they'll leave us alone. Fixed one disapproving eye on him. I always have wondered if you have a screw or two loose. Sure, the harbor are in it deeper than us, but the heroes could still find a hell of a lot to shake up around here. If they so chose. And yeah, that Hasaikai raid was nasty. He took his last sip of his drink. In any case, there's something else, said Izuku. I wanted to ask ya. The old man raised an eyebrow. And what's that, boy? Inside, Izuku was trying not to tremble in fear. I'm stronger than him. I can just knock him out if I have to. He pulled out the card. One of my connections outside the district said the police found this. It was at the scene of a murder. He handed the card over to the elder Hojo, who stared at it for a long time. It was in an area the police were in the process of reclaiming. My connection took it out of the evidence bag when they weren't looking. Said they never did manage to figure out what it meant before. He trailed off. That was his part done, right? Izuku's heart raced. He watched Hojo. The man just kept staring at the card. Staring. And staring. Boy, he said at last. This is what you bother me with? This is what's got your butt on backwards. Izuku paled. I just thought that. No, you didn't fucking think. You never think. Connections outside the district? The F, do you think you're doing? Meddling with police investigations and shit. You'll have the whole bloody business up in flames if you're not careful. A card? Those cops would have probably never figured it out. We keep the meaning of this card under wraps for a reason. He held it up to show Izuku, in a predatory, educational fashion. But now you can bet they'll be suspicious if you took it. Bloody hell, Waka. If you just use your brain for 1 second. But you don't have any idea how it might have gotten out. I mean, we didn't have any people out there, or... What does it effing matter? And for what it's worth, no, I have no idea. I'm not the only bloody one who keeps these things. Hell, it could have been anybody. It could have been my brother for all I know. Who cares? We've got heroes bearing down on us. You want to use your connections for something useful? Then figure out what the hell their plan is. You can get to work on that tonight. If I catch you still in this club in 15 minutes, chatting up some lady, you're dead, kid. Get out of my sight. Shaking, thinking that he was probably giving a pretty realistic reaction, Izuku turned and exited the room. His mind was spinning as he hurried across the balcony, walking like a storm passing through, the guards parting at the sight of him in fear. The music pounded in his head. The lights flashed. Demon, dude. Kami whistled through the earpiece. I got all that. So nothing to do with him then, huh? Unless he's hiding something from even Waka. Then we'll probably never find it out. Unless we interrogate him directly. As ourselves, Izuku muttered, heading down the stairs, eyes darting around to the various guards in the club. Dude, you see the security levels in there? And some of them have quirks that are totally nutso. Even you probably couldn't take on that many at once. And believe me when I say you'd have to fight all of them to get to him if you were showing as Deku. Izuku was no longer listening. He had gotten distracted. Midoriya-kun? You there, pal? He was watching a scene over by one of the tables. It was the dark-haired woman in the blue dress he'd interacted with earlier. She was being pulled along by one of the drunk mobmen who'd passed him on the stairs. The guy was grinning at her and leaning close, but she was snapping at him in annoyance. Izuku walked closer. Deku, what's happening? He got close enough to just barely hear what they were saying. The people at the table spotted him, and their eyes widened, but they said and did nothing. Useless. Why won't anyone help her? That can't go with you. If I leave now, Waka will kill me. The woman was shouting. Not my problem, doll, the man responded creepily, trying to yank her along. Then, she saw Izuku approaching. Her annoyance was flooded over with fear. Total fear. Izuku felt awful. Maybe not a sec worker in title, but how many women are practically being held hostage here? By guys like this guy I'm pretending to be? Hey, he said gruffly, walking over to the man. What the hell is going on? He didn't realize that he had the calm button pressed. Midoriya. Like, what are you doing? The man, clearly way too drunk, turned around, wrenching the woman about and causing her to cry out. Izuku stepped forward, meaning to help her. The man shoved his hand against Izuku's chest. Who the F do you think you are, Al? Waka. His eyes glanced up at Izuku's face in shock. Wait. He looked back down at his hand. His hand had gone through the illusion. It was touching Izuku's chest, past the outer layer of Wakamaru. How fed up did I get? He muttered aloud. Izuku hissed and stepped back. Get lost, you scum, he coughed out, losing his grip, trying to maintain character. The woman was watching him in confusion and terror. The people at the table were, too. Some guards had come down the steps, or emerged from the shadows along the walls. What's this, huh? What's going on? Hey, what the waka? What's the deal with? They were all looking at him. Izuku spun in a panicked circle, the lights flashing around him. A vaguely pink aura glimmered in front of his face. He realized the man had shoved him too roughly. The illusion was breaking. Hee. Izuku laughed nervously. One of the guards stepped forward with a look of open suspicion. Midoriya, get out of there. The man's gun poked through the illusion shield. The glamour of Wakamaru glitched and faded. Izuku looked down and saw his own green costume. The spell was broken. The guard looked at him in pure shock and astonishment. It's an imposter. Open fire. Izuku jumped straight up into the air as gunfire crackled through the room, following him up, tearing up the walls. The music blared as he bounced off one wall, then another, then swung over the top of the balcony using Black Whip. The lights flashed. The gunfire followed him. He landed on the balcony, bending his knees lightly, and one of the guards still up here fired on him. Izuku lashed out a Black Whip and grabbed the gun, throwing it away. The man pulled a knife and charged. Danger sense was going haywire. Izuku dodged the knife as the man swung up, down, across. He kicked the man in the shins and punched him in the chest with 5% of One for All. Walked back toward the staircase. Deku, I'm on my way. A quirk laser fired at him. He ducked low, and another man reached him. A grappling of hand-to-hand combat. Izuku threw one guy over his shoulder, spun and kicked the next guy down the stairs, and then the third guy got into a deadlock with him. Izuku stiffened for a moment, their fists clashing together, as he realized that this one had super strength as well. He jumped upward again, green sparks flashing, and used Black Whip to throw him off the stairs. Then a guard opened his palm and generated some kind of net. The net coursed with violet light, and when it closed around Izuku, he felt all his limbs go limp. The net tightened, forcing him into a pencil position, his whole body swaying sideways as if he was going to fall over. Holy shit! A bullet hit him in the leg. He cried out in pain. He'd broken bones before, but he'd never been shot with an actual bullet. That was a first. He billowed smoke up around his body, obscuring himself, not knowing what else to do. Trying to use small Black Whips to tear through the net, even as he fell to his knees from whatever paralyzing effect it had. The users were screaming in his ear. Cammy was screaming in his ear. Danger sense was blaring. A man with a club sticking out of his arm tried to attack him. Izuku managed to bend over and hurl the man off of his own back with a move of upward force, and then kicked him in the crotch. His leg hated him for it, all the blood in it rushing around and nearly making him black out. Need FAG. Now's the time to use it? Another bullet grazed his arm. He tore half the net off, but collapsed at the same time. Silhouettes moved through the smoke. Someone leapt on top of him roughly. He could feel the strength of one for all, the strength he could use to beat this, but his body couldn't move to use it. Everything was overwhelming. Then, a familiar sound of a familiar quirk, and a familiar voice. Nijire tsunami. Yellow spirals swept over the attackers. Izuku managed to tear the other half of the net off with black whips, and felt the blood recourse through his body. His limbs flailed. There was a flying silhouette fighting guards above him. A flash of blue and lilac. My savior. The smoke and danger sense going haywire was driving his brain into mush. My heroine. Heido, senpai, is that you? The smoke seemed to part to reveal her, backlit by the flashing lights, a huge grin on her face, her eyes alight as she took out one last guy. Behind her, more people were storming in. Police. Hey there, Deku, she called, narrow spirals ejecting from her feet and keeping her in the air. Fancy seeing you around these parts. You got a haircut. It was all he could think to say. She tilted her head. Sweet of you to notice, hey look out. Danger sense was so screwed up that it focused in only at the last second. It was the guy with the net quirk again, and this time, he fired his projectile point blank at the back of Izuku's head. Nijire's attack enveloped him a half-second later, but by then all the one for all users had screamed in terror, and then everything went dark. Nijire walked through the busy bottom floor room of the safe house, past Gang Orca talking to a group of policemen. She slightly hurried her steps as she walked past the whale hero, but his eyes flickered to the side and noticed her. Excuse me, gentlemen. Gang Orca picked up some white sheets off a table and then walked over to Nijire, leaning over her and talking in a hushed voice. A moment, Heido. Could you take these fresh linens to the infirmary? We have a few more injured coming in a couple of hours. Nijire's immediate mental response to being treated like an errand girl was less than mature. But she had already trained herself to keep a cool head around Gang Orca. He had very early on displayed a low tolerance for her constant jabbering, as he called it, which was less than nice to deal with. Blank-faced, she replied with, all right, and took the linens, heading for the stairs. The safe house was a multi-storied brick building with narrow corridors, alcove-like rooms, and canted ceilings. After asking around everywhere, Nijire had found out that it was formerly some kind of hostel. In any case, it was filling up quickly. Luckily, they were all moving out soon. At least for a time. And then they'd come back and it would be less crowded. Until they rescued and captured more people, of course. And on the cycle would go. Nijire liked the safe house. It was nice to have a place to anchor herself. Nevertheless, her whole body was itching to do more, to help more, to stretch her legs beyond this district. She pushed the door to the infirmary open. It was in reality just one of the larger available rooms in the hostel that they had crammed 5 beds into. Walking space was limited to a narrow aisle by the wall. In the nearest 2 beds, some civilians slept quietly. One of them was Nova, snoozing with her mouth slightly open, the stars and galaxies on her skin all slowly drifting to the left. Nijire placed the stack of linens on one of the unoccupied beds, then paused for a moment, considering. She sighed and unfolded one of the sheets, deciding to go ahead and replace the ones on the unoccupied beds even though she hadn't been ordered to. The far bed by the window was one she had forgotten was occupied. The boy that was laying there now stirred, after being unconscious for half a day. Nijire perked up as she made the bed, looking over at him. Midoriya-kun? She asked in a hushed tone. You? Midoriya turned over, smacking his mouth with eyes still closed. He was dressed in a white shirt and shorts, and in some feverish twisting that had come over him in the middle of the night, he'd fully untangled himself from the sheets, which now lay askew about his feet. Nijire watched him for a moment longer as he attempted to wake and sit up, and then returned to her task for a moment, putting her back to him. She would try to be polite, he'd been through a lot. If he wanted to make conversation, he would. Hato-senpai? Is that you? Well, there it was. She turned around, giving him a chipper expression as she tucked the sheets in around the edge of the bed. Yes, it's me. Hi. He smiled wearily. It was hard to recognize you from behind when your hair is so much shorter. Nijire let out a soft snort through her nose. How are you feeling? Like I was shot in the leg and then. With a weird electric net twice in a row. He groaned and ran a hand through his messy green hair. The collar of his white shirt was loose, revealing a triangle of exposed chest. Where's my hero costume? We had to strip you out of it. Sorry, I saw you naked. Well, I technically saw you in your underwear. And you weren't conscious. Though, to be fair, how did you get so muscular? Why are you so nervous all the time when you've got gains like that? What were you doing in the Hojo's place? Where have you been all this time? Who were you talking to through the earpiece? Are you here to help us? Are you going to help with the convoy dash? Nijire shut her mouth like a mousetrap, clapping one hand over it with wide eyes. She had not meant to say all that. There my mouth goes again. She watched the tired boy with fear, waiting for him to say something like, Hato, I just woke up, or one at a time please. Or could you leave me alone? Instead, Midoriya just stared back at her with his head tilted curiously for a moment, and then said, That's okay if you saw me without any clothes on. I guess you had to heal me somehow. I got muscular through training, and I'm still nervous sometimes because of stress, I think. I was in that place on the trail of a murderer who was working with the Hojos. I've been out on the streets helping everywhere I can since leaving UA. I was talking to Kami Utsushimi, who was helping me, and I can't say for sure whether or not I can help you guys with a convoy, whatever that is. There are people elsewhere who need me. Nijire could only gape at him, stunned. He'd answered every single one of her questions in order, in reasonable depth, after only a brief pause to process them. She didn't even know how to feel about that. What happened to my earpiece? Is Kami here? Midoriya asked, looking around. Ah, the earpiece got destroyed. Sorry. I left the bits of it on top of the washing machine where your costume is getting cleaned up. It's downstairs. And I don't know anyone named Kami. Sounds like a first name, though. Nijire couldn't help but fill her eyes with the fire of teasing, and curl her lip up a little bit. Midoriya only blushed a little, to her further surprise. She asked me to call her that, he muttered. I wonder where she went. Did she leave me back there to fend for myself? No, she wouldn't have done that. I hope she didn't get captured. She had some kind of history with the family, so if they got her then she could be in real danger. Mutter, mutter, mutter. Nijire waved a hand in front of his nose. Earth to Deku, she said. Sorry. No worries. A light giggle escaped her. She had no idea that Midoriya was so fun to interact with. You can get spacier than even me, somehow. Is there anything else you wanted to know? Where exactly am I? What were you and other heroes doing in Kijimi, Hato-senpai? How does my leg feel so much better? Is Recovery Girl here? We're not at you, are we? Suddenly, it sounded like he was about to panic. No, you're not at UA. Nijire laughed a bit, waving a hand to calm him down. For some reason, he was activating weird instincts inside of her. She could actively feel herself loosening up. It's just a safe house outside of Kijimi. Recovery Girl is not here, she's still at the school. Your leg got healed by one of the policemen who has a quirk specifically for bullet wounds. The net stuff wore off on its own. They also did their best with your other scratches. She faltered for a moment, remembering being there as Mandalay took his top off, seeing all the scars covering his muscular torso. Oh, and we're here in Kijimi because we were assigned to it. To clean it up. To make sure those Hojo guys and the harbor aren't taking over via mob rule and taking advantage of the civilians hiding out here. It's also an outer border area to UA, so in case any scarier villains try to come through here, we'll do our best to stop them. Yes, but why were you assigned to it? I thought all the students were confined to UA until further notice. Except you, I suppose? You really didn't like the idea of being back at the school. Midoriya-kun, she said gently, sitting on the side of his bed. I'm not a student anymore. The years turned. I'm a graduate. Oh. The boy paled. That's right. I'm sorry. That didn't even occur to me. It's okay. Ochako and Tsuyu's desperate request flashed through her mind again. Bring him back. She coughed and shifted off the bed, returning to her task. Anyway, if you wanted to stay and help, you gotta talk to Gang Orca or Mandalay. They're in charge here. Oh, this is the safe house Gang Orca's in charge of? Midoriya raised his eyebrows. That means the convoy must be going to UA then. Yes. We're transporting a bunch of civilians and refugees. The streets are too dangerous to have a trickle of travel parties, according to Mandalay. We have to wait to pick up a bunch of people at once and then take all the heroes to accompany them back. That makes sense. Midoriya frowned. How many heroes do you have? 10? 12. Nijire tapped a finger to her chin, looking at the ceiling. I'm honestly not sure, a lot are in and out. That surprises me. You always try to find out a complete answer for everything, Hato-senpai. Nijire looked back at him, a smile dancing on her lips. He seemed perfectly sincere. You don't know everything about me, Midoriya, she half-whispered. He blushed. If you say so, it must be true. She turned to finish making the other beds, still smiling, but keeping it to herself. The washing machine is the next floor down, in the room directly beneath this one. It's noisy as heck so you can't miss it. Put your costume up to dry on the clotheslines outside. All the other belongings we found on you are on top of the machine. Thank you, Hato-senpai. For that and for saving me, But, also? Could I ask you one more thing? Something in his voice made her pause and turn back around. Izuku Midoriya swallowed nervously and pointed to the side of his own face. Is this from Dabi? Her smile flickered. She cast her eyes downward. Yeah, she answered. I apologize for letting that happen. He bowed his head. That shocked her. Huh. My arms and legs were blown out at the time. I wasted all my power on Shigaraki when he was just going to regenerate anyway, and there were still so many of you that needed to be kept safe. If I just thought of doing something sooner. What, using your crazy whips out of your mouth? Nijire crossed her arms and stared at him, one hip strutted out to the side. Don't you dare apologize for that, Izuku Midoriya. You kept fighting every way you knew how until the end. And so did I. It didn't kill me, see? She pointed at her own burn scars. I'm still here. Yes, I suppose. But I'm glad you understand. She turned around and tucked the last corner of the sheets, and then headed for the door. Feel better soon, Midoriya. I'll see you downstairs in a bit. Maybe. Then she went. To inherit the power of so many who came before you, and be a target of the most frightening people in the world, all at his age. He must be feeling so cornered. But what was more worrying was how much guilt he seemed to carry with him all the time. Even so, he's so nice to talk to. She could have spent another half an hour in there asking and answering questions with him. Unfortunately, there was more work to be done. Bring him back, said Tsuyu's voice again. Nijire pushed it away. After searching through some rooms and closets, Izuku managed to find a hairdryer. He took his costume out of the washer and spread it out on top of the machine, plugging in the hairdryer and running it all over his outfit. As he spread the hot air across it, he thought of Cammy doing the same thing to him, only with her mouth. When she put the illusion on him, his cheeks heated up. I really can't afford to think about this. Why not? Asked Yoichi Shigaraki inside his head. The first user's voice was soft. Well, it's wrong. And a waste of time otherwise. There's nothing wrong with it, kid, Daigoro Banjo put in. You're just a teenager, that's all. It's perfectly healthy to get a little worked up sometimes. I confess I do not understand it, said Hikid Shinomori, but it does not seem wrong to me. Are you asexual? Izuku asked. I suppose so. It made retreating into the woods to power up one for all much easier. No attachments. Izuku was troubled. Was that what he would have to do as well? Said Nana Shimura. That's what you're worried about. Her voice was filled with something like thick guilt. Izuku continued to use the blow-dryer. You loved a man once, he finally said to her, after a long pause. The rest, The consequences of that decision, they left unsaid. Ninth, Yoichi put in, you cannot be the best hero without following your heart. The heart is from where all your best qualities stream out. I don't love Kami, Izuku said, so I can't call it following my heart. Do you think you deserve to? Asked the second user. Izuku did not deign to answer that. The noise of his drying must have drawn attention. The door opened to his side, and a familiar voice said, "It's not very heroic to waste our limited electricity." Izuku looked at the woman standing in the door, smirking with her hands on her hips. He might have gotten flustered before, but he was too hurried for that now. "I'm sorry, Mandalay." He returned to his task. "I don't have time to let it dry on a clothesline. I have to go soon." "That's not the best way to dry either. Your costume will end up all wrinkled." "Well, wrinkled is better than filthy, anyway." Mandalay sighed and entered the room, walking over to Izuku and patting him on the back. The top of her head only came up to his eyes. "You need to rest for at least another day. You were shot in the leg." "It was healed, apparently. I can walk just fine, ma'am." He could feel her worried eyes searching him. "I have been shot before, Midoriya. You need to at least do some easy walking around today to make sure nothing lingering is wrong." "Why the rush?" "You know why. Midoriya, Shigaraki and All for One may not even be ready to make moves again yet. If they sense me lingering in one place too long, that may be enough for them to decide to. They want to make things as hard for me as possible." All for One implied as much in that mansion video. The very first villain he'd caught out here, a few days before Muscular, had been injected with a tracker that led back to a remote mansion in the woods. He'd accompanied Endeavor and a few other heroes inside, only to receive a personal message from AFO and then an explosion to the face. Ever since, not a single defeated enemy had given them any leads. AFO meant for me to find that guy first. And then no one else. He wanted me out on this mission afraid from the start. "They're making things hard for you," Mandalay said softly, "and you're letting them." He turned off the hairdryer and looked at her. An auburn-haired curvy woman in her mid-30s with narrow eyes and long eyelashes. She was wearing a tank top and the skirt from her hero costume, which had a weird effect on him. He'd meant to look at her firmly and make a point, but for a moment, staring into her eyes, he forgot what it was. Mandalay smiled, a bit coyly, and took a slow step backward from him. "Cat got your tongue?" she asked. Are you the only one here?" "The only, pussycat?" Mandalay nodded. "The others are assigned elsewhere where their talents will be of more use. I'm using my voice for enemy confusion and rescue, and my close combat works nicely for these mob types. Seems I still need a bit more training on fighting a bunch of guys at once," Izuku muttered. "I suppose you're most used to taking down massive titans in one-on-one fights, and refusing to let anyone help you." Mandalay crossed her arms. "What were you doing around here?" Suspected the Hojos of working with the person who murdered a Shiketsu security official and attacked the school. Didn't get any leads, though. Izuku's costume was dry, so he began to try and flatten out the wrinkles with his fingers. "Do you fancy yourself some kind of detective now, Midoriya?" "Only intermittently. I have other work to do. Very soon, I might add." He looked up at her again and fought to suppress his blush. "Could you go out while I change?" Mandalay clearly found his discomfort a little amusing. "I saw you in just a towel once before, do you remember?" "Yes. To be honest, I think about you and the summer camp in a fantasy capacity more often than I'd like to admit." God, he really was down in the trenches with these thoughts, wasn't he? Even when safe at UA, he'd been less distracted than this. "Don't put on your costume right now, Midoriya. Please. You need to rest for just a little longer. Could you do it for an old woman's peace of mind, at least? I'm sure your mother is worried sick about you." The topic of his mother made him realize how serious she was. Her eyes were almost begging. "You're not old," he muttered. She laughed musically. "Well, for that I thank you. I do care about you, Midoriya. We all do. If you're so antsy about needing to help, I don't really know what to say to change your nature. But we could use your help tomorrow with the convoy. Hato-senpai said you had 10 or 12 heroes available to help. We have 8. There's a lot of civilians here that need to get back to UA. I can't go back to UA, Mandalay. That's the last place I want to go. I need to get back to my investigation and my patrols. That's how I can help UA. There's still someone targeting schools out there, and I can't decide if they're connected with All for One or not. I'm not sure which outcome I like less. You don't have to go all the way there. You don't have to be spotted if you don't want. Just help us along some of the way, will you? Please? Izuku stared into her eyes. He was pretty sure it was the baser part of his brain, the part that was attracted to her, that made him say, all right. As if that would make her look at me in any way other than a boy in over his head. Mandalay's smile was relieved. Thank you, Midoriya. Can I give you a hug? She opened her arms. Yeah, I guess. She stepped forward and wrapped him into an embrace, nestling her head on his shoulder for a moment. You smell better than you did when you pulled you out of there, at least, she mumbled. Izuku hugged her back somewhat stiffly, his heart racing, certain she could feel it. Her ample chest was pressing against his and sending butterflies to his stomach. When she pulled away, he was simultaneously relieved and committing the entire experience to memory. As she stepped back, she smiled and looked into his eyes a moment longer, then exhaled awkwardly and gave a short nod of her head. Okay, she said in a somewhat higher voice. I'll leave you be. There's a bit of food downstairs for you. Eat it or face my wrath. Yes, ma'am. His stomach growled on cue, causing her to giggle. All right. See you later, Midoriya. She turned to leave. Ah, Mandalay, I'm sorry I didn't speak to Kota before I left you. I left him a letter instead. She turned her head up and over her shoulder, her expression distant. That's all right, Midoriya. It seems you boys communicate your feelings best indirectly. And then she was gone. Izuku felt confused in a few more ways than one. Nana, can I ask you an honest question? Of course, kid. Was she flirting with me? Nana did not respond. Izuku had no idea how to interpret her silence. He got some food in him and then took to exploring the safe house, walking slowly up and down the staircases, making sure his leg was all fine like Mandalay had suggested. He saw a few vaguely familiar faces of both police and the heroes that were around. They only gave him looks that could have meant anything. No one spoke to him until he went back downstairs. In the entryway, Gang Orca was looming, talking to Nijire. In fact, they were arguing. Some personnel rushed by escorting injured civilians toward the stairs. Tamaki Amajiki, Sun Eater, was helping them. Izuku had not seen him in a long time. When the pointy-eared boy noticed him, his eyes widened for a moment, and he awkwardly said, hello, Midoriya, as he passed by. Hey, Amajiki-senpai. Izuku suspected Tamaki might be the only young hero more visibly anxious than himself. Talking to him had a curiously confident effect on Izuku. Do you need any help? Nah, we got it. Thanks though. Take it easy, son. Izuku refocused his attention in the noisy room to the main source of the noise, which was Gang Orca and Nijire's argument. Jabbering on about things that aren't relevant. I can't afford to have you wasting my time. We found out what time they'll be by the docks. Nijire insisted, pumping her fists in front of herself. Even when arguing, she had a brightness in her eyes. Her scarred side was to Izuku, and her facial tissue was clearly stiffer than before. She used to be so animated. Now, it was all in her eyes and body language only. One nugget of knowledge is not worth all the other stuff you spewed. You are not to interrogate the captives again. Understand me? Know your lane, Nijire-chan, and this will all go smoothly. Orca took notice of Izuku. Ada, it's good to have you here. Izuku felt Nijire's gaze on him. She didn't seem that openly bothered about Gang Orca talking to her like that, but his sudden switch to politeness threw even Izuku off. Is there a problem? He blurted, not intending for that to be what he said. Nijire's mouth opened a little in surprise. Gang Orca seemed slightly taken aback. No problem, Deku. We just have a way of running things here. I know you've got your own mission to attend to, so feel free to rest here until you return to it. Izuku narrowed his eyes. I actually intend to help you out with your convoy tomorrow. Oh, excellent. We could really use you. Though, He watched the civilians disappear up the stairs. The infirmary is going to be full. You'll have to move rooms and we're honestly pretty full. Midoriya could sleep in Amajiki's room, Nijire put in. No, all the DMN rooms in this place are too small for even a normal-sized person. Gang Orca ground his teeth. Nijire lowered her head, as if ashamed for making the suggestion. Izuku's annoyance grew. This is a post-quirk hostel. Surely you have a mutant-sized room you're using, sir? He did not mean to make his voice so testy. What's gotten into me? There's a girl in there using it. Then again, it is fairly spacious. I have the night watch tonight, so if you wanted to use a corner of the floor in there, Gang Orca tapped his chin. Though, she is a girl and cannot be moved anywhere else. Alright. Is this girl Irika Kitsune? You know her. I rescued her. All Might said he was bringing her to this safe house. Would she trust you to sleep in the same room as her? I can't speak to that, sir. We only briefly met. Obviously I would say this about myself, so take it as you will, but I am trustworthy. Gang Orca huffed. Well, I believe that well enough. You've grown, Deku. I remember when you were a little shrimp, bravely attacking me at the license exam. Having seen you in action now, sometimes I wonder what would have happened if that fight had continued. Izuku glanced at Nijire for a moment, who was watching this unfold. Then back to Orca, right into his eyes. If we heroes ever gain enough free time again, I'll be happy to have a rematch. Just say the word, sir. He backed away. Cool. I'll go talk to Kitsune-san. Though I do not know the way. Gang Orca opened his mouth, and Nijire jumped in brightly. I'll show him. Orca nodded. Good. Was just about to suggest that. I'm far too busy. As you were, students. He walked out of the house. Izuku looked at Nijire again. He'd only ever noticed her from afar as someone who was genuinely disposed to be happy, but upon closer look, there was something else under the surface. Or did that just come from Dabi too? She definitely took note of his staring, but just waved him along with her shoulder. Come on. He followed her, somewhat mentally behind. Heido-senpai, does Gang Orca give you a hard time? Let's just say we aren't very compatible. She pouted. It's fine though. I'm just gonna keep doing whatever's best for the group. That's why we were trusted to be out here. He did call you a student. And you've graduated. That's disrespectful. You were slow on the uptake for that too, Midoriya-kun, she teased. Why yeah, but you don't have to stand there and take it if you don't want. Life's too short to get all upset about these things. I'm stuck with him for this mission, but it may be that I never have to work with him again. Which is fine. So it goes and all that. Anyway, I think Irika-chan will be happy to see you. You know her? How long has she been here? About a week. She hasn't shut up about you and how you saved her from some guys harassing her. Why, they were just scared, I think, since she's so big. Nijire pouted again. That better not be how you think of her all the time. No, it's not. I don't think of her much at all. No, that's not Sorry. I really didn't expect to see her again. I've had other stuff on my mind. Nijire's face softened. I get it, Midoriya-kun. You don't have to explain yourself. But, go easy with her, alright? If you're gonna sleep in her room, I mean. His face reddened. Her grin of mischief crept back. I didn't even mean it like that, Kahai, but if that's how it is, then that's how it is. Well, how did you mean it? They climbed further up through the hostel than Izuku had yet been. Nijire waved her hand. I think she respects you a lot. You gotta live up to that image she has in her mind. Heido-senpai, Izuku muttered, you're telling me nothing I don't already know. Nijire stopped on a landing. She stared at him with a worried expression. What convinced you to come with us on the convoy tomorrow? She asked. Not what? It was Mandalay. Her eyes twinkled. I see. Well, Irika-chan's room is just here. On the landing, she pushed a tall door open. Inside was a very tall room, but also a very narrow one. Everything was arranged in a line, with the bed at the very back. Sitting on it, tilting her head back with her eyes closed, was the mutant girl Irika. Miss, Nijire called softly as she gently opened the door further. Irika tilted her head down and opened her eyes softly. Izuku's heart skipped a beat. She's really cute too. I'm drowning in this nonsense. Echum, she murmured. Then she noticed Izuku. Deku-san. She scrambled up, eyes wide, and hit her head on the ceiling. Ah! She cried out in pain, ducking back down and rubbing her ears. Are you okay? Nijire had activated her quirk to float across the room to her, but Izuku moved first, using Nana's power. He reached her head and checked behind her ears as she rubbed them. Okay, everything seems fine. Irika seemed to wilt. Her eyes looked at him shamefully. I'm usually more careful, but this room is actually so nice that I got too comfortable. I'm too used to having to hunch over. I'm glad you found a place to be comfortable, he told her honestly. Yeah, it's just, my posture can get really bad, so, her ears twitched as she sat back down on the massive bed. Izuku floated down to stay level with her. Girl, I know how that is. Nijire had joined them, smiling wide. She crossed her arms beneath her BRSS. And yours are even heavier than mine. Izuku's jaw dropped. Irika blushed so deeply that it seemed she might explode. Her eyes darted to Izuku. Nijire, she cried aghast. Sorry, I just thought it'd be funny. Still smiling a little, Nijire tucked a swirl of her shorter blue hair behind her ear. My bad. Anyway, Izuku coughed. It's good to see you again, Kitsunsen. It's good to see you too, it's just, the mutant girl's blush began to fade. Why are you here? Her head tilted curiously. I'm gonna be helping the convoy tomorrow. We're gonna get you and the other civilians safely to UA. That's nice. Tomorrow. Irika closed her eyes again and leaned back. I hear UA has even better rooms for people like me. That'll be nice. Yes, kitten. How did you know it was me when I came in? Last time you saw me, I was masked and in costume. Oh, her eyes shot open wide again and she looked at Nijire. Nijire bounced. She asked to see a picture of you. And I showed her one. From you dancing at the culture festival, remember? Just to know how you really looked. I was just curious. Irika protested, waving her arms in front of herself. To Izuku, this was a thoroughly novel experience. He wasn't entirely sure how to process any of it. I understand, he said quickly, averting his eyes. It was pretty mortifying, because he knew the exact image Nijire would have pulled up. It was on UA's social media. The two of them were unable to look directly at each other now. Nijire seemed oblivious. Oh, Midoriya, we forgot to tell her why we even came up here. Sorry, Irika-chan. There's no more room in the infirmary for Midoriya and he has to stay another night. And this room is the only one big enough. Irika squeaked. You're making me leave? What? No, of course not, silly. Midoriya's just gonna be staying here with you. The mutant girl swayed. It seemed as if she might faint. Izuku scratched the back of his neck. Sorry to intrude, Kitsun-sen. If you're not comfortable with it, I'll just go on the roof. Or just stay up. Maybe go on a patrol and come back. It's nothing I'm not used to dash. No, Irika interrupted firmly after gathering herself. No, you need rest. You should stay here, with me. I mean, another nervous squeak escaped her. I'm fine with it, is what I meant to say. I trust you. Izuku cleared his throat. Well, thank you. For having me. He awkwardly moved to the end of the bed and set his things down. He could feel Irika's eyes on him and, oddly, Nijire's as well. How much of her bubbly obliviousness is an act? She seemed to create chaos on accident sometimes, but also sometimes on purpose. If I only had time to figure it out. He'd never admit it aloud, but he'd had a mild crush on Nijire from a distance ever since the work studies, and it had ballooned up a bit after the cultural festival. He suspected he wasn't alone in that, though, considering how beautiful and popular she was. Okay. Nijire clapped her hands and floated back toward the door. I'll leave the two of you to it. I'm in the room directly below, so let me know if you need anything. that seemed to be mainly aimed at Irika, so Izuku didn't make eye contact. Bye, Nijire. Bye, Hato-senpai. Bye. And off she went. The door shut. Irika laughed nervously. She's a handful. Yeah? Izuku coughed. He could feel the OFA users grinning at him on the inside. Stop enjoying this. He'd made a promise to Mandalay to stay here, though, and that meant sharing this room with Irika Kitsune. He looked back at the mutant girl. She noticed him staring, was wide-eyed for a moment, and then closed her eyes and smiled. She was just cute. And big. And cute. The whole situation was making his heart race, not least of which due to her behavior toward him as well. I never had time for this, but now I'm stuck here. Izuku sighed. It was going to be a long night.